The kitchen of Murphy's Corner, a modest establishment in suburban Portland, had become both her sanctuary and her prison over the past 3 years. Tonight, the summer heat turned the cramped space into an inferno, causing sweat to trickle down her neck, threatening to undo the careful edges of her golden highlighted braids. "Order up for table 7. The shout from the service window made her shoulders tense. Another ticket, another order, another moment where her dreams felt just out of reach. Natalia's fingers instinctively found their way to the delicate silver chain around her neck, her mother's last gift. The familiar touch centered her as it always did when the weight of reality pressed too hard against her chest. 27 years old, and some days she still felt like that little girl watching her mother cook Sunday dinner, memorizing every movement, every secret ingredient. "You good, Nat?" Miguel, the line cook, shot her a concerned glance as he passed by with a stack of clean plates. "You've been stirring that bisque for 5 minutes straight." She forced a smile, though her back ached from standing all day. "Just making sure it's perfect." The words came automatically, like so many other responses she'd learned to give when people asked how she was doing. The truth was more complicated. The pile of unopened bills in her apartment told one story. The rejection letter from the culinary grant program she'd applied to last month told another. But the most pressing truth, the one that had been haunting her for the past 3 weeks, sat hidden in her locker, wrapped in an old takeout napkin, a positive pregnancy test. 2 lines that had turned her world upside down. "Hey!" Miguel's voice dropped lower as he leaned against the counter beside her. "Some of us are hitting up that new bar on Madison after close. You should come. When's the last time you did anything fun?" Natalia's first instinct was to decline. Her feet hurt, her back was killing her, and she had early prep tomorrow. But something in her chest tightened at the thought of another night alone in her apartment, overthinking every decision that had led her to this point. "You know what?" She surprised herself with the words, "Maybe I will." 2 hours later, Natalia stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. She'd changed out of her chef's whites into a simple burgundy dress that hugged her curves without being too flashy. Her braids were pulled back into a loose updo, golden highlights catching the light. The dress had been an impulse buy months ago, a reminder of the woman she sometimes forgot she could be, when she wasn't buried under responsibilities and expectations. The bar turned out to be more upscale than she'd expected, with exposed brick walls and warm lighting that made everyone look like they belonged in a magazine. Miguel and the others quickly dispersed into the crowd, leaving Natalia perched at the bar, nursing a club soda that she'd asked the bartender to dress up like a cocktail. "That's an interesting choice." The voice came from her left, warm and deep like honey over gravel. She turned, ready with a polite dismissal, but the words died in her throat. The man beside her had the kind of presence that seemed to quiet everything else around him. Tall, with a neatly trimmed beard, and dark hair styled with casual elegance. His grey-green eyes held a gentleness that made her want to lean in closer, even as her instincts told her to maintain her distance. "The drink," he clarified, gesturing to her glass. "Club soda with a twist, but made to look like everyone else's Friday night special. There's got to be a story there." Natalia felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "Maybe I just like the bubbles." He laughed, and the sound did something to her chest that she wasn't ready to examine. "Fair enough, I'm drinking plain water myself, but I didn't think to make it fancy. Clearly, you're the creative one between us." The conversation flowed easier than it should have with a stranger. He never asked for her name and she never offered it. Instead, they talked about everything else, the live jazz band in the corner, their favorite spots in Portland, the way the city changed when summer finally broke through the rain. "You've got flour on your ear," he said suddenly, reaching out before catching himself. "Sorry, I shouldn't—" "No, it's—" Natalia touched her ear, feeling the phantom warmth of his almost contact. "Hazard of the job, I probably have it everywhere." "Chef? Working on it." The words came out softer than she intended. "Right now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "I know that feeling. Sometimes treading water takes everything you've got." The honesty in his voice made her brave, Or maybe it was the way the bar's golden lights caught the silver at his temples, making him seem both younger and older at once. Do you ever wonder if you're doing it all wrong? Like everyone else got some secret manual for life and your copy got lost in the mail? He turned fully toward her then, and the intensity of his full attention made her breath catch. Every damn day. They talked until Miguel appeared at her elbow, apologetically announcing that their ride was leaving. The stranger stood as she gathered her purse, and for a moment Natalia thought he might ask for her number. Part of her wanted him to. A bigger part was grateful when he didn't. "Thank you," she said instead, meaning it more than she could explain. "For making tonight feel real," he finished when she trailed off. "Yeah. Thank you too." Walking away felt like leaving something unfinished, but maybe that was the point. Some moments weren't meant to be stretched into something they weren't. Sometimes a perfect night was perfect because it remained just that, a single night, untouched by reality's complications. Later, lying in bed with one hand resting on her still flat stomach, Natalia replayed the evening in her mind. She thought about paths not taken and choices that chose you back. About the way life sometimes gave you exactly what you needed, even if it wasn't what you thought you wanted. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, bills to pay, dreams to chase, and a future to figure out. But tonight, she let herself remember the stranger's laugh, the almost touch, the way his eyes had seen past her careful defenses. Tonight, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she sometimes felt. She fell asleep with her mother's necklace clutched in her hand, dreaming of grey-green eyes and possibilities. Natalia's apartment bathroom felt impossibly small as she stared at the ultrasound appointment card in her trembling hands. 6 weeks. The numbers seemed to dance before her eyes, mocking her carefully laid plans. The morning sickness had gotten worse over the past week, forcing her to sprint to the employee bathroom between prep tasks, earning concerned looks from her co-workers. A knock at her front door made her jump. "Nat, your car's outside, so I know you're in there." Evie's voice carried through the thin walls, familiar and demanding. Natalia quickly tucked the appointment card into her makeup bag. "Coming!" She gave herself one last look in the mirror, straightening her shoulders. The woman staring back at her looked the same as always, yet somehow completely different. When she opened the door, Evie Patterson swept in like a fashion magazine come to life, her honey-colored eyes sharp beneath perfectly arched brows. Today she wore a cream blazer over a rust-colored silk top, gold bangles jingling at her wrists. 3 unreturned calls. Really? I'm sorry, I've been busy. Yeah, you've been busy a lot lately. Evie's tone softened as she took in Natalia's appearance. You look tired, babe. And you never miss our Sunday brunches. What's really going on? The concern in her best friend's voice nearly broke Natalia's resolve. They'd been inseparable since 3rd grade when Evie had shared her lunch after bullies had knocked Natalia's tray to the ground. Through every milestone, every heartbreak, every triumph, they'd been each other's constant. But now, looking at Evie's perfectly ordered life, her rising career in fashion, her immaculate apartment in the nice part of town, her 5-year plan complete with vision boards, Natalia felt the words stick in her throat. "Just working extra shifts," she managed. "Trying to save up, you know?" Evie's fingers went to her ring, twisting it absently, a tell she'd had since high school whenever she sensed someone wasn't being completely honest. For the culinary program? Something like that. Natalia moved toward the kitchen, needing distance. "Want some tea?" "What I want is my best friend back." Evie followed, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "You've been different since that night you went out with your work crew. Did something happen?" Natalia focused on filling the kettle, grateful for the excuse to keep her back turned. "Nothing happened. It was just drinks." "Then why won't you look at me?" The kettle clattered against the burner as Natalia's hands shook. She gripped the counter, feeling suddenly light-headed. The room tilted dangerously. "Nat?" Evie's voice seemed to come from far away. "Oh my God, Natalia!" Strong arms caught her before she hit the floor. Somehow, she found herself sitting on her worn couch, Evie's worried face swimming into focus. When was the last time you ate? Evie demanded, already reaching for her phone. I'm ordering delivery, and don't you dare argue. I'm pregnant. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Evie's hand froze mid-dial, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something else, something that looked uncomfortably like disappointment. What? Evie's voice was barely a whisper. How? When? Remember that night at the bar? Natalia's laugh held no humor. Turns out it was more eventful than I let on. The night you barely told me anything about. Evie's tone sharpened. The one time you go out without me and... She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. Who is he? I don't know his name. You don't know his name. Each word fell like an accusation. That's not like you, Nat. You're the responsible one, the planner, the one who what? Natalia pushed herself up straighter, anger giving her strength. The one who never takes risks, never steps out of line, never disappoints anyone? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Evie's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. She checked it reflexively, then kept checking, her fingers scrolling endlessly as she avoided Natalia's gaze. I have an appointment next week, Natalia said quietly. First ultrasound. And? Evie's eyes remained on her phone. And I'm keeping them. That got Evie's attention. Them? The doctor who confirmed the pregnancy thinks it's twins. Natalia touched her stomach, still flat beneath her t-shirt. Based on my hormone levels. Evie set her phone down carefully like she was handling explosives. Twins. With a stranger. While working at a job that barely covers your rent. She stood, pacing the small living room. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. It is happening, and I need my best friend. What you need is a reality check. Evie spun to face her. You can barely take care of yourself. How are you going to handle 2 babies? What about your career, your dreams? Each question hit like a physical blow, echoing Natalia's own late-night fears. I don't know, okay, I don't have all the answers, but I know I'm doing this. Of course you are. Evie's laugh was brittle, because God forbid you ask for help or admit you're in over your head. I'm asking for help right now. No, you're telling me what you've already decided. Like always, Evie grabbed her designer bag from the chair. You want to do this alone? Fine, but don't expect me to watch you throw your life away. Evie, wait. But the door had already slammed, leaving Natalia alone with the echo of her best friend's words and the sudden, overwhelming silence of her apartment. She made it to the bathroom just in time, morning sickness mixing with panic, until she wasn't sure which was causing her to heave. When it finally passed, she sat on the puits, cold tile floor, pressing her forehead against the bathtub's edge. Her phone chimed with a calendar reminder. Dinner prep shift started in 2 hours. The world didn't stop turning just because yours had been knocked off its axis. Slowly, mechanically, she got ready for work. Clean chef's whites. Hair neatly braided back. The familiar routine helped steady her hands, if not her heart. At the door she paused, one hand going to her mother's necklace. I could really use some of your wisdom right now, Mum, she whispered to the empty apartment. No answer came, but as she walked to her car, the late afternoon sun broke through Portland's perpetual clouds, warming her face. She thought of the stranger from the bar, his kind eyes, his gentle voice, the way he'd seemed to understand her without words. Somewhere out there, he was living his life, completely unaware that everything was about to change. She wondered if he'd be happy about the news or if he'd react like Evie, with disappointment and fear masked as concern. But that was a question for another day. Right now she had a shift to work, bills to pay, and a future to figure out. One step at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. She touched her stomach, feeling stronger than she had all day. Just us for now, little ones, she murmured. But we're going to be okay. The sun caught her mother's necklace, sending fractals of light dancing across her dashboard. For a moment it looked like stars, like possibilities, like hope. The Portland Women's Clinic waiting room smelled of antiseptic and artificial lavender. Natalia sat rigidly in an uncomfortable plastic chair, watching other women come and go, some with partners, some alone like her. Her appointment time had passed 20 minutes ago, but she didn't mind the delay. Each passing minute gave her more time to prepare for whatever the ultrasound might reveal. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from work. Miguel covering for her dentist appointment could only last so long, and nothing from Evie. A week of silence stretched between them like a chasm, the longest they'd gone without speaking since Evie's semester abroad in college. "Ms. Carter?" A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "We're ready for you." Natalia followed her through sterile hallways, her heart thundering against her ribs. The examination room was small, dominated by medical equipment she tried not to look at too closely. "Change into this." The nurse handed her a paper gown. "And Dr. Lewis will be with you shortly." Alone, Natalia changed quickly, folding her clothes with careful precision. Her mother's necklace caught the fluorescent light, and she pressed it between her palms like a prayer. "Please let them be healthy," she whispered to the empty room. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting Dr. Lewis, the kind-faced woman who had confirmed her pregnancy 2 weeks ago. Instead, a man in hospital scrubs stepped through the door, head bent over a chart. "Hi, I'm filling in for Dr. Lewis today. The chart lowered and time seemed to stop. Grey-green eyes met hers, widening with recognition. The same eyes that had haunted her dreams for weeks now stared back at her from above a surgical mask. "You," she breathed. Caleb, she finally had a name to put to the face that lived in her memory, stood frozen in the doorway, his complexion notably paler beneath his neat beard. The chart in his hands trembled slightly before he steadied it. He cleared his throat. "I'm not supposed to be here." Natalia pulled the paper gown tighter around herself, suddenly achingly aware of her vulnerability. "Clearly. No, I mean," he stepped back, professional training visibly warring with personal shock. "I'm a paramedic. I'm just shadowing the OB department today as part of a cross-training program. I'll get the actual doctor." "Wait." The word escaped before she could stop it. He paused, one hand on the door handle. The silence between them crackled with unspoken words. "How far along?" he asked finally, his voice gentle. 8 weeks. Natalia watched his quick mental calculation, saw the moment everything clicked into place. "Twins, apparently." He swayed slightly, reaching for the counter to steady himself. "Twins? You should sit down. I should get the doctor." "Caleb." His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate and foreign all at once. He looked at her sharply, surprise flickering across his features. "Your ID badge," she explained, gesturing to the card clipped to his scrubs. "Caleb Monroe." "Natalia Carter," he read from her chart, a small smile touching his eyes above the mask. "We did this backward, didn't we?" A laugh bubbled up in her, chest borderline hysterical. "Just a bit." He pulled a rolling stool closer but didn't sit, maintaining a careful distance. "I have about 1,000 questions. I have about 1,001 answers, but..." She nodded toward the door. "Maybe we should do this somewhere I'm not wearing paper." "Right. Yes, of course." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful styling. "I'm off at 6. There's a coffee shop across the street. Unless you don't want to, I understand if you'd rather not." 6 works. He nodded, relief visible in the relaxation of his shoulders. "I'll get Dr. Martinez. She's excellent, the best in the department." "Caleb?" He paused again at the door. "Thank you for not running." Something complicated passed across his face. "I'm done running," he said quietly, and somehow she knew he meant more than just from this situation. The next hour passed in a blur. Dr. Martinez was indeed excellent, her calm professionalism helping Natalia through the awkwardness of the examination. But it was the grainy image on the ultrasound screen that took Natalia's breath away. 2 tiny flickering heartbeats, strong and steady. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Martinez assured her, printing out several copies of the ultrasound. "Would you like me to send one to your primary care physician?" "Yes, please." Natalia couldn't take her eyes off the images. Perfect. They were perfect. Back in her own clothes, she sat in her car until her hands stopped shaking. The ultrasound photos lay on the passenger seat, Concrete evidence that this was all real. She was having twins, and their father was no longer a nameless stranger, but a paramedic named Caleb Monroe, who looked at her like she was both a miracle and a complication. The hours until 6 crawled by. She called Miguel to apologize for the extended absence, making up a story about dental complications. Then she drove home, showered, changed, and stood in front of her closet, having an existential crisis about what to wear to tell someone they were going to be a father. She finally settled on a simple blue dress that made her feel both comfortable and confident. Her braids were fresh, done just yesterday, the golden highlights catching the late afternoon sun as she made her way to the coffee shop. Caleb was already there, changed out of his scrubs into dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that made his eyes look more green than grey. He stood when he saw her, pulling out her chair with an automatic courtesy that spoke of ingrained habits. "I got you herbal tea," he said as she sat. "Chamomile, it's supposed to be good for—" He gestured vaguely. "Everything." "Thank you." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, grateful for something to hold on to. So. He mirrored her pose, his own coffee untouched. "I don't know where to start. How about with why you're really shadowing the OB department?" A shadow crossed his face. "Direct, okay." He took a deep breath. "I was a trauma response paramedic. 8 months ago, I lost a patient, a pregnant woman in a car accident. I froze. Just for a second, but—" He stared into his coffee. "I took some time off. When I came back, I requested cross-training in every department that scared me. OB was at the top of the list." Natalia reached across the table before she could stop herself, touching his hand. He started at the contact, but didn't. "Pull away." "Your turn," he said softly. "Why didn't you try to find me?" "Would you have wanted to be found?" "Yes." The speed and certainty of his answer surprised them both. "I mean, I think so. That night, it meant something. You meant something." "It was one night." "It was more than that." His fingers curled around hers. "You know it was more than that." She pulled the ultrasound photos from her purse, sliding them across the table. "Well, now it's definitely more than that." He studied the images with the focus of someone trying to memorize every detail. "Twins," he breathed. "I still can't believe— Are you okay? Do you need anything? I want to help, but I don't want to overstep." "I don't know what I need," she admitted. "I haven't told many people, just my best friend, and that didn't go well." "Tell me about it." So she did. About Evie's reaction, her fears about work, her dreams of culinary school now seeming impossibly distant. He listened without interrupting, his thumb tracing absent patterns on her palm. "What do you want?" he asked when she finished. "Best case scenario, what would make this easier?" The question caught her off guard. Everyone else had told her what to do, what to think, what to feel. No one had simply asked what she wanted. "I want—" Her voice cracked. "I want to not be scared all the time. I want to know I'm not ruining their lives before they've even started. I want—" She broke off, pulling her hand back. "It doesn't matter what I want. This is reality." "It matters," he said firmly. "Everything you want matters, and you're not alone anymore, Natalia, not unless you want to be." She looked at him then, really looked at him, at the kindness in his eyes, the strength in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands that matched her own uncertainty. He was still practically a stranger, but somehow he felt like someone she'd been waiting to meet her whole life. "I don't want to be alone," she whispered. His smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Then you won't be." The morning rush at Murphy's Corner was in full swing, but Natalia barely noticed the chaos around her. Her mind kept drifting back to the coffee shop conversation with Caleb 2 days ago, to the warmth of his hand on hers, to the quiet strength in his voice when he'd promised she wouldn't be alone. "Earth to Natalia." Miguel's voice cut through her thoughts. "The bisque is about to boil over." She lunged for the pot, quickly adjusting the heat. The rich aroma of seafood and herbs filled her nostrils, and her stomach immediately revolted. Morning sickness, though it struck at all hours, had been getting worse. "I got it," Miguel said, already moving to take over. "Go get some air. Natalia didn't argue, making her way to the back alley where the kitchen staff took their breaks. The cool morning air helped settle her stomach, but it couldn't quiet her thoughts. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Caleb. Just finished. Night shift. Thought about you all night. Dinner tonight. They'd been texting since the coffee shop. Careful messages that danced around the enormity of their situation. Each one felt like building a bridge between who they'd been that first night and who they needed to become. Can't tonight, she typed back. Working dinner service. Then, after a moment's hesitation, but I'm free tomorrow. His response came quickly. Perfect, I'll cook, unless you don't trust a paramedic in the kitchen. Despite everything, she smiled. Brave words to a professional chef. I contain multitudes, and I make a mean lasagna. The back door creaked. Open, and Miguel stepped out, concern etched on his features. You okay? You've been off lately. Natalia pocketed her phone, guilt gnawing at her stomach alongside the morning sickness. Miguel had been covering for her more and more, asking fewer questions than she deserved. I'm pregnant, she said quietly, the words getting easier with each telling. Twins. Miguel's eyes widened, then softened with understanding. The mystery. Man from the bar, she nodded. Does he know? He does now. She leaned against the brick wall, suddenly exhausted. He wants to be involved. And you? What do you want? I want... She closed her eyes, remembering Caleb's question in the coffee shop. What did she want? I want to give them their best chance. I want to figure out how to be a mother without losing myself. I want to not feel like I'm drowning. Miguel was quiet for a long moment. You remember when I first started here? Couldn't tell a whisk from a spatula? She laughed despite herself. You set fire to a salad. I still don't know how. But you taught me. Stayed late. Showed me the basics. Never. Made me feel stupid for not knowing. He bumped her shoulder gently. Let people help you too, yeah? The back door opened again, this time revealing Danny, the restaurant owner. His usually cheerful face was creased with worry. Natalia, got a minute? Her heart sank. Too many sick breaks. Too many covered shifts. She followed him to his small office, preparing her explanation. Sit, please. Danny gestured to the chair across from his desk. We need to talk about your hours. I know I'm cutting you back to prep shifts only. The words hit like a physical blow. Prep. Shifts paid less, had fewer hours. Danny, please, I need the dinner service. The tips are not worth you collapsing in my kitchen. His voice was kind but firm. Miguel told me you've been sick, doctor's appointments, long breaks. I'm not firing you, Natalia. I'm trying to help. By cutting my income? She hated the tremor in her voice. By keeping you and my customers safe. He slid a paper across the desk. New schedule. Mornings only. Regular breaks. Full benefits. And a small raise to help offset the lost tips. She stared at the paper, throat tight. Why? Because 10 years ago, my wife worked through her entire pregnancy, 60-hour weeks, on her feet all day, lost the baby in her 7th month. His eyes were distant with old pain. I'm not letting that happen in my kitchen. Not when I can prevent it. Natalia touched her stomach, the twins suddenly feeling more real, more fragile. I'm not even showing yet. But you will be, and you'll need support. He smiled gently. We take care of our own here, remember? She nodded, unable to speak. The new schedule would mean tighter finances, but the benefits. Health insurance alone would make a huge difference. Thank you, she managed finally. Just promise me one thing. Danny stood, coming around the desk. When these babies are born, bring them by. Every kitchen needs a next generation to corrupt. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. By the time she got home, exhaustion had settled deep in her bones. She barely made it to the couch before collapsing. Her phone chimed with another text from Caleb. Just woke up. Dream about you. Both. Of you, all three of you. Still getting used to that part. The simple honesty of it made her chest ache. She found herself dialing before she could think better of it. He answered on the first ring. Hey. Hey. She curled into the corner of her couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. Bad day. Could use a friendly voice. Tell me. So, she did. About the morning sickness, the schedule change, Danny's story. Caleb listened, offering quiet support and the occasional question. I don't know, he said when she finished. My apartment has a real kitchen. Not just for tomorrow's dinner, but whenever you want it. For practice. For your recipes. For anything. The offer hung between them, weighted with possibility. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of you, but of everything. Of depending on someone. Of letting myself believe this could work. Me too. His breath rustled through the phone. But I meant what I said before. We can figure this out together. Small steps. Small steps, she echoed. Like dinner tomorrow. Like dinner tomorrow. She could hear his smile. Fair warning, though. My lasagna really is legendary. You might fall in love. The words sent a shiver down her spine. With the lasagna? Let's start there and see what happens. After they hung up, Natalia sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, one hand resting on her stomach, the other still holding her phone. Outside, Portland's eternal rain had started again, drumming against her windows in a gentle rhythm. Her mother's necklace caught the last light of day, and for a moment she could almost hear her mom's voice. Sometimes the best recipes are the ones you make up as you go along. Maybe that's what this was, a new recipe, with ingredients she never expected and steps she'd have to learn as she went. But for the first time since seeing those 2 lines on the pregnancy test, the future didn't feel like a weight around her neck. It felt like possibility. Her phone lit up with one more text from Caleb. Sweet dreams, chef. See you tomorrow. Small steps, she thought, smiling. Sometimes they were the ones that carried you the farthest. Caleb's apartment building sat in a quiet corner of northeast Portland, its brick facade softened by climbing ivy. Natalia checked the address again, though she'd already memorized his text. 3rd floor, Unit 3C. She could do this. It was just dinner. The elevator was out of order. Of course it was. So she climbed the stairs slowly, each step measured. At the 3rd floor, she paused, catching her breath. The scent of garlic and herbs drifted down the hallway, making her stomach growl appreciatively, for the first time in weeks. Before she could knock, the door opened. Caleb stood there in a navy blue apron, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms dusted with flour. I heard you on the stairs, he explained, looking slightly sheepish. Wanted to make sure you didn't change your mind. And run from the promise of legendary lasagna. She stepped inside, taking in the space. Not a chance. His apartment was surprisingly warm, with exposed brick walls and tall windows that caught the setting sun. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with medical texts and what looked like classic literature. The promised kitchen opened to a living area where a worn leather couch faced a small fireplace. It's not much, he said, watching her explore, but it's home. It's lovely, she meant it. The space felt lived in, personal in a way that spoke of careful choices rather than decorator catalogues. Wine? He gestured to a bottle on the counter, then immediately grimaced. Sorry, I didn't think... Sparkling water would be great. He moved to the fridge, efficient and graceful in his own space. How was the morning shift? Better. The new schedule helps. She accepted the glass he offered, their fingers brushing, though I'm still adjusting to having my afternoons free. Free for things like supervising questionable cooking attempts? Is that what this is? She leaned against the counter, watching him check something in the oven. Should I be concerned? He straightened, a smile playing at his lips. I'll have... You know, this recipe has been passed down through generations. Of paramedics? Of very determined Italian grandmothers, actually. He pulled out a chair at the small kitchen table. My mom's family. They take lasagna very seriously. Natalia sat, touched by the simple courtesy. Tell me about them. They're loud, loving, and completely overwhelming. He returned to the counter, beginning to chop fresh basil. The practiced motion surprised her. Sunday dinners are mandatory. Everyone brings food, stories, drama. My nonna, my grandmother, holds, caught from her favorite armchair, dispensing advice whether you want it or not. They sound wonderful. They are. He paused in his chopping. They'd love you. The quiet certainty in his voice made her chest tight. You sound pretty sure about that. I am. He turned to face her fully. They'd love your passion for food, your strength, your... He gestured vaguely. Everything. You barely know me. I know enough. He moved closer, leaning against the counter. I know you hum when you're thinking. I know you touch your mother's necklace when you're nervous. I know you're scared but doing this anyway, which makes you one of the bravest people I've ever met. Natalia looked down at her hands, realizing she was indeed clutching her necklace. I'm not brave. I'm just adapting. That's what bravery... Zoist the timer dinged, saving her from having to respond. Ready to test my grandmother's legacy? The lasagna was, as promised, incredible. Layers of pasta, sauce and cheese melted together perfectly, the fresh basil adding brightness to the rich flavors. Natalia found herself going back for seconds, much to Caleb's obvious delight. Okay, she admitted, setting down her fork. I'm impressed. High praise from a professional. He refilled her water glass. Though I should confess, I called my nonna twice while making it. She says hi, by the way. Natalia stilled. You told her about me? Not everything. He met her gaze steadily. Just that I was cooking for someone special. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Natalia pushed her plate away slightly, suddenly needing space to think. Too much? Caleb asked quietly. No, it's... She took a deep breath. It's not too much. It's just... real. All of this is so real. Come here. He stood, offering his hand. I want to show you something. She let him lead her to the living, a room where he pulled a book from one of the shelves. My sister sent this last week, said I might need it. The cover showed a cartoon stork carrying twins. The Complete Guide to Twin Pregnancy, Natalia read aloud. I've been studying. He opened to a marked page. Did you know at 12 weeks they can start sucking their thumbs, and their fingernails are already growing? Something in her chest cracked open at the sight of his careful annotations in the margins. You're really in this, aren't you? All in. He set the book down, taking her hands in his. I know it's fast. I know we're doing everything backward. But when I'm with you, it feels right, she finished. It feels right. He tucked a stray braid behind her ear, his touch impossibly gentle. Can I kiss you? We did that part already, she reminded him, smiling. Rather thoroughly, as I recall. That was different. That was strangers in the night. This is... He stepped closer, one hand cupping her cheek. This is us, now. Choosing this. She rose on her tiptoes, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, nothing like their passionate first encounter. This was a beginning, not an ending. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not for that, just to stay. Watch a movie, let me hold you. The responsible thing would be to leave, to take things slowly, to protect her heart. But she was tired of being responsible, tired of being alone. Okay, she said, but I get to pick the movie. They settled on the couch, Natalia tucked against his side like she belonged there. The movie played, but she barely registered the plot, too aware of Caleb's steady heartbeat under her ear, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. Tell me about your mom, he said during a quiet moment. You wear her necklace every day. Natalia touched the familiar silver chain. She was amazing, strong, creative, loving, the best cook I've ever known. She worked 3 jobs to raise me after my dad left, but she never let me see how hard it was. Every Sunday was baking day, no matter what. Is that why you became a chef? Partly. She always said food was love made visible. Her voice caught. She died 5 years ago, cancer, but sometimes I still catch myself reaching for the phone to call her, especially now. Caleb's arms tightened around her. What would she say about all this? She'd laugh, probably. Then she'd hug me and say, something wise about how life gives you exactly what you need, even if it's not what you expected. Natalia smiled through sudden tears. Then she'd start planning the nursery and knitting tiny hats. She sounds wonderful too. She would have liked you. Natalia shifted to look at him. Your calm strength, your kindness, the way you notice things about people. Like how you're falling asleep right now. She realized, the combination of a full stomach, emotional honesty, and Caleb's warmth was making her eyelids heavy. I should go, she murmured, not moving. Or you could rest just for a little while. He pulled a throw blanket over them. I've got you. She meant to protest, to be sensible, to maintain some boundaries in this rapidly evolving relationship. Instead, she found herself drifting off to the sound of his steady breathing and the distant hum of the city. Her last conscious thought was that maybe, just maybe, her mother had been right. Maybe life did give you exactly what you needed, wrapped in the most unexpected packages, like legendary lasagna and medical textbooks with careful annotations, like the sound of rain starting outside and strong arms holding you close. Like falling in love, slowly and then all at once with the father of your children. Like coming home to a place you'd never been before. Caleb stared at the trauma room doors, his hands trembling slightly as he peeled off his latex gloves. The tout. Call had seemed routine at first. A minor car accident, nothing he hadn't handled hundreds of times before. But then he'd seen her. Dark hair, pregnant belly, blood on the steering wheel. For a moment, he was 8 months in the past, frozen in place while a woman's life slipped away under his hands. Monroe. Dr. Harrison's voice cut through his spiral. Patient stable. Clean headlack, minor concussion. Baby's heartbeat is strong. You did good. He nodded mechanically, but the praise felt hollow. He hadn't frozen this time, but he'd felt the old panic rising, threatening to overwhelm him. If his partner hadn't been there... His phone buzzed. In his pocket, a text from Natalia. Lunch, I made too much pasta salad, definitely not on purpose. The simple message anchored him back to the present. 3 weeks had passed since their dinner at his apartment, weeks filled with shared meals, late-night conversations, and a growing certainty that somehow, impossibly, this could work. On my way, he texted back. Need to shower first. Had a rough call. Her response was immediate. I'm at the park by Murphy's. Take your time. I've got sunshine and carbs waiting. 30 minutes later, freshly showered and changed into civilian clothes, Caleb found Natalia sitting on a checkered blanket under a massive oak tree. She wore a flowing sundress that made her braids shimmer golden in the dappled light, and his breath caught at the sight of her. That bad, huh? She asked as he dropped onto the blanket beside her. She must have read something in his expression. Car accident, mother and baby. They're fine, but... He accepted the container she handed. Him, the pasta salad colorful with cherry tomatoes and fresh herbs. I almost couldn't handle it. Natalia set down her own food, giving him her full attention. What happened? Nothing. Everything. He pushed the pasta around with his fork. 8 months ago, I lost a patient. Pregnant woman. Car crash. I hesitated, just for a second, and she bled out. Her baby, too. I can still hear her husband screaming in the waiting room. Oh, Caleb. She reached for his hand, twining their fingers together. I took leave after that. Couldn't trust myself in the field. Today was the first similar call since I've been back, and He squeezed her hand. I keep thinking about you, about them. His free hand moved to her stomach, still flat but now carrying their shared future. The thought of anything happening. Hey! She shifted closer, pressing his palm more firmly against her abdomen. We're right here, safe, present. He nodded, letting out a shaky breath. Under his hand, he imagined he could feel the tiny lives they'd created, though he knew it was too early. I haven't told you everything, he said quietly, about why I froze that day. Natalia stayed silent, waiting. My sister, the one who sent the twin book, she lost a baby 5 years ago. 3rd trimester. I was with her when it happened, but I couldn't do anything, just hold her hand while she... He swallowed hard. Ever since then, pregnant patients trigger something in me, this fear that I'll fail them too. Is that why you requested OB rotation? Exposure therapy, sort of. Face the fear head on. He managed a small smile. Didn't expect it to lead me to you. Life's funny that way. She opened her bag, pulling out a slightly crumpled envelope. Speaking of unexpected things, I have something to show you." Inside were more ultrasound photos, newer than the ones from their first reunion. The images were clearer now, two distinct shapes becoming recognizable as tiny humans. 12-week checkup, she explained. Everything's perfect. They're growing, exactly as they should. Caleb studied the photos with wonder, his earlier anxiety receding. They look like actual babies now. The doctor said they're about the size of limes. Natalia's voice held a mix of awe and amusement, which explains why none of my pants fit anymore. He looked up sharply. "You're showing?" "Barely. Just a little roundness that could be too much pasta." She smoothed her dress over her stomach. "But it's there." Without thinking, he leaned over and kissed her. She tasted like summer and herbs and possibility. When they parted, her eyes were soft with understanding. "We're okay," she whispered. "All four of us." A child's laughter from the nearby playground caught their attention. A little girl with braids like Natalia's was being pushed on a swing by her father, her joy echoing across the park. "I want that," Caleb said suddenly. "Not just being present for appointments or sharing meals. I want everything." Middle of the night, feedings, first steps, playground duties. I want to be a real father. Even though we barely know each other, we're learning. He tucked a stray braid behind her ear. "Every day we learn more. Like how you stress bake at midnight and I can't sleep without reading first. How you believe in signs from the universe and I believe in backup plans. How we both want to be better than our fears." Natalia was quiet for a long moment, absently gathering pasta salad onto her fork. "I got a letter yesterday," she said finally, "from the culinary program." Caleb's heart clenched, remembering their conversations about her dreams of being a chef. "And?" "They're offering me a spot. Part-time program, starts in the fall." She set down her fork. "I applied before everything. I never thought I'd get in." "That's amazing." He started to congratulate her, then saw her expression. "Isn't it? It's impossible, the timing, the cost, the logistics. We'll figure it out." The words came without hesitation. "If this is what you want, we'll make it work." She stared at him. "Just like that? Just like that?" He gathered, their empty containers, buying time to choose his next words carefully. "Move in with me." "What?" "My place is closer to the culinary school. It has an actual kitchen, 2 bedrooms. He met her startled gaze. "We're having twins, Natalia. We can do this alone or we can do this together. Share expenses, share responsibilities, share everything. That's crazy. Crazier than having twins with someone you met in a bar." She laughed, despite herself. "Point taken. But living together? That's a logical next step." He touched her cheek gently. "Look, I'm not proposing marriage or promising forever. I'm just saying, let's give ourselves the best chance. Let's make it easier, not harder. My lease isn't up for 4 months. Perfect timing for the fall semester." She shook her head, but he could see her considering it. "You don't think we're moving too fast?" "I think we're moving exactly as fast as we need to." He gestured to her stomach. "They're not slowing down for our comfort." A cloud passed over the sun, casting patterns through the oak leaves onto their blanket. In the playground, the little girl had moved to the sandbox, her father still watching attentively. "Okay," Natalia said softly. "Okay? Okay, let's do it. All of it." She smiled, bright and a little terrified. The apartment, the school, the whole crazy adventure. Caleb pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Together? Together." She nestled into his embrace. "But you're helping me pack, and we're keeping my coffee maker. Deal." He pressed a kiss to her temple. Although I should warn you, my nonna will definitely show up unannounced with lasagna once she hears about this." "Sounds perfect." Natalia's hand found his, guiding it back to her stomach. They need to learn family recipes from somewhere. Above them the sun emerged again, turning the world golden. In the distance a siren wailed, but for once Caleb didn't feel the old panic rise. Instead he felt something new, hope, stretching out before them like the summer afternoon, full of possibility and promise. Sometimes the best medicine for old wounds was the chance to create something new, something beautiful, something real. Evie Patterson stood frozen in the doorway of Luxe Boutique, her honey-colored eyes fixed on the woman across the street. Even from this distance, she'd recognize those golden highlighted braids anywhere. Natalia was laughing, one hand resting on her now visible baby bump as she walked beside a tall man with kind eyes and a neat beard. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. They looked like everything Evie had always imagined for her best friend, except for the timing, except for the circumstances, except for the fact that Natalia hadn't spoken to her in nearly 2 months. "Miss Patterson?" Her assistant's voice broke through her thoughts. "The vendor meeting." "Reschedule it." Evie grabbed her bag, already moving. Something came up. She burst out of the boutique just as Natalia and the man, this had to be the mystery bar stranger, reached the corner. "Natalia." Her friend turned, surprise flickering across her features before settling into something more guarded. The man's hand moved protectively to the small of her back. "Evie." Natalia's voice was quiet, careful. "Hi. Hi." Evie's laugh held no humor. "2 months of silence and all I get is hi? You're the one who walked out." Natalia's chin lifted slightly. "You're the one who said you couldn't watch me throw my life away." The man cleared his throat softly. "Should I give you two some space?" "No." Both women spoke at once, then looked at each other in surprise. "Caleb, this is Evie Patterson, Natalia hesitated. "My oldest friend." "Evie, this is Caleb Monroe, the father of my children." Evie studied him more closely. Tall, well-dressed in a casual way, with steady eyes that met her gaze without flinching, not what she'd expected from Natalia's description of a one-night stand. "We were just heading to lunch," Caleb said, his voice gentler than Evie deserved. "Would you like to join us?" "Caleb," Natalia started. "She should come." He squeezed Natalia's hand. "Some conversations are easier over food." 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, tension thick enough to cut with the butter knives laid out before them. Evie's fingers found her ring, twisting it nervously as she watched Natalia scan the menu. "The morning sickness is better," Natalia said suddenly, not looking up. "In case you were wondering." "I was." Evie's throat felt tight. "I've been wondering a lot of things." "Like what?" "Like why my best friend of 20 years didn't tell me she was moving in with someone." At Natalia's startled look, Evie continued, "Small city. Word gets around. We haven't exactly been talking. And whose fault is that?" "Both of ours," Caleb suggested mildly, earning sharp looks from both women. "Sorry. I'll go check on our orders." Once he was gone, Evie leaned forward. "He seems not terrible. He's wonderful." Natalia's voice softened. "He's kind and steady and he wants to be part of this. All of it." "And you trust him? After everything with your dad?" "That's not fair." "None of this is fair." Evie's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered it with effort. "You're my sister, Nat. Not by blood, but by choice. By 20 years of being there for each other. And suddenly you're having twins. Moving in with a stranger. Changing everything. And I'm just supposed to smile and pretend this isn't terrifying? You think I'm not terrified?" Natalia's hand went to her stomach, a gesture so maternal it made Evie's chest ache. "Every decision, every change, it's all terrifying. But it's also right. I feel it in my bones." "Like your mom used to say?" "Yeah." Natalia smiled slightly. "Like Mama used to say." The mention of Natalia's mother hung between them, heavy with shared memories. Evie remembered countless nights spent in that warm kitchen, learning to braid hair and bake cookies and dream big dreams. She remembered holding Natalia through the funeral, promising they'd always be family. "I miss you," Evie whispered. "I miss my best friend." "I miss you too." Natalia reached across the table, catching Evie's restless hand. "But I need you to understand. This is happening. The twins, Caleb, culinary school." "Culinary school." Evie's eyes widened. "You got in. Starting this fall, part-time program. Oh my God, Nat." For a moment they were teenagers again, sharing dreams and possibilities. That's amazing, but how? We're figuring it out. Natalia glanced toward the counter where Caleb was clearly giving them space, pretending to be fascinated by the pastry display. Together, Evie studied her friend's face, the quiet confidence there, the glow that wasn't just pregnancy. You really love him, don't you? I'm getting there. Natalia squeezed her hand. But I already love who I am when I'm with him. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Evie blinked back unexpected tears. Your mum would be so proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us. Natalia's own eyes glistened. And she'd tell us to stop being stupid and fix this. We're fixing it now, aren't we? Getting there, Natalia smiled. Small steps. Caleb chose that moment to return, bearing plates of food. Everything okay here? Getting there, Evie echoed, meeting his eyes, properly for the first time. Thank you for taking care of her. We take care of each other. He set a plate of chocolate cake between them. And I heard stress isn't good for godmothers. Evie's fork clattered against her plate. What? Natalia laughed at her expression. Well, someone needs to teach these babies about fashion and dramatic exits and emergency spa days, Evie added, her voice thick, and how to make their Aunt Evie's famous margaritas when they're much, much older. They both laughed then, the sound carrying away months of hurt and misunderstanding. Caleb watched them with a small smile, his hand finding Natalia's under the table. So, Evie said, composing herself, tell me everything, and I mean everything, starting with how you two actually met, because I know there's more to that story. As Natalia began to talk, with Caleb adding details and corrections, Evie felt something in her chest unknot. Yes, everything was changing. Yes, it was terrifying, but maybe change didn't always mean loss. Maybe sometimes it meant making room for more love, more family, more possibilities. Oh! Natalia suddenly pressed a hand to her side. They're moving! Without hesitation, she grabbed Evie's hand and placed it on her bump. After a moment, Evie felt it, the tiniest flutter, like butterfly wings against her palm. Hello, little ones, she whispered. Your Aunt Evie is here, and she's not going anywhere. The promise felt right, settling into her bones like one of Mama Carter's old recipes. Some ingredients might change, some methods might need adjusting, but the core remained the same. Love, family, presence. Looking at Natalia's radiant smile and Caleb's protective watchfulness, Evie knew she was witnessing something rare and beautiful. A family being born, not just of blood or circumstance, but of choice and courage and second chances. And she was. Part of it. Small steps, big love, all of it. Just like Mama Carter always said. Moving day dawned grey and humid, Portland's summer heat trapped beneath low clouds. Natalia stood in her half-empty apartment, surrounded by labelled boxes and 5 years of accumulated memories. At 20 weeks pregnant, her bump was now unmistakable, stretching the fabric of her oversized T-shirt, one of Caleb's stolen weeks, ergo and never returned. That's the last of the kitchen boxes, Caleb announced, entering with Evie close behind. Both were flushed from carrying things down 3 flights of stairs, the moving trucks almost full. I still can't believe how many spatulas you own, Evie added, collapsing onto the lone remaining chair. It's like they multiplied in the drawers. Each one has a specific purpose, Natalia defended. But her heart wasn't in the banter. Her eyes kept drifting to the marks on the wall where she'd tracked her height against her mother's, the windowsill where she'd nursed her first herb, garden, the corner where she'd cried herself to sleep after the funeral. Caleb noticed. He always noticed. We can take a break, he offered quietly. There's no rush. But there was. Her lease ended tomorrow, and her first culinary school payment was due next week. Everything was moving so fast, changing so completely. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the now familiar flutter of movement. Oh! She grabbed Caleb's hand suddenly, pressing it to a spot just below her ribs. Feel that? Someone's doing somersaults. His face lit up with wonder. It did every time, never growing old. Strong little athletes we've got there. More like future chefs, Evie corrected, joining them. with all those cooking genes. The babies chose that moment to kick again, harder, making them all laugh. The sound echoed in the empty apartment, chasing away some of Natalia's melancholy. "Okay," she said, straightening. "Let's finish this." They worked steadily through the morning, Caleb handling the heavy lifting while Natalia directed, and Evie organized. By early afternoon, only her bedroom remained. "I've got this part," she told them, needing a moment alone. "Why don't you two start unpacking the kitchen at Caleb's?" "Our place," Caleb corrected gently. "It's your home too now." She managed to smile, watching them leave before turning to the task at hand. Her mother's old jewelry box still sat on the dresser, filled with memories more than valuables. Inside, beneath tangled chains and mismatched earrings, lay a sealed envelope. "For my grandchildren," her mother had written across the front, just months before the cancer took her. "When the time is right." Natalia had never opened it, saving. Cared for exactly this moment. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. "My dearest ones, I'm writing this letter not knowing when or how you'll come into the world, but knowing with absolute certainty that you will be loved. Your mother, my beautiful, stubborn, passionate daughter, has a heart big enough to hold universes. She'll teach you to cook with love, to stand tall in storms, to find beauty in unexpected places. I hope you inherit her smile, her courage, her ability to make something wonderful out of whatever life gives her. I hope you know, deep in your bones, that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, about showing up, about love that grows stronger through trials. To my grandchildren, I leave my recipes, my stories, and my endless faith that life gives us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it. To my daughter, reading this now, because I know you are. Trust your heart, my love. It's always led, you true. All my love." Mama Natalia pressed the letter to her chest, tears flowing freely. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Caleb stood there, concern etched on his features. "You've been up here a while," he said softly. "Everything okay?" She held out the letter wordlessly. He read it quickly, his own eyes growing suspiciously bright. "She would have loved you," Natalia whispered. "Your quiet strength, your gentle heart, the way you make everything feel possible." He crossed the room in 2 strides, gathering her close. "Tell me about her? About growing up here?" So, she did. About Sunday baking sessions and late-night talks. About learning to make pie crust and life decisions. About the time she and Evie had tried to sneak out but got caught because they couldn't stop giggling. As she talked, they packed the last of her things, photo albums, recipe books, the jewelry box with its precious letter. Each item wrapped carefully in paper, each memory preserved. "Ready?" Caleb asked finally, picking up the last box. "Almost." She walked to the kitchen doorway, where height marks tracked her growth. Running her fingers over the pencil lines, she smiled through her tears. "Mom used to say I grew in spurts, stubborn about that like everything else." "We can mark heights at our place too," Caleb said, "for all of us." The simple promise of future, of family, of permanence made her breath catch. "I'd like that." Downstairs, Evie had returned with iced coffee and news. "The kitchen's mostly unpacked and you'll never guess who stopped by." "Nonna," Caleb groaned. "I told her we weren't moving in until tomorrow." "She brought lasagna," Evie grinned, "and about 12 other dishes. Said something about pregnant women needing proper Italian feeding." "She's impossible," Caleb said, but his voice held nothing but fondness. "She's family," Natalia corrected, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Just like we all are now." They drove to the new apartment in convoy, Caleb in the moving truck, Natalia and Evie following in her car. The afternoon had turned golden, sun breaking through the clouds like a blessing. "You're really happy, aren't you?" Evie asked softly. "I am." Natalia touched her bump, feeling another flutter of movement. "Scared too, overwhelmed sometimes, but happy. Your mom would be proud of all of this." "I know." The letter crinkled in her pocket, its words already memorized. "She always said life gives us what we need, like impossibly perfect paramedics who cook lasagna, like best friends who come back. Natalia reached for Evie's hand, like family that grows when you're not looking. They pulled up to Caleb's, their building just as his grandmother emerged, arms full of food containers, silver hair escaping its elegant twist. "There you are, Bella," she called, hurrying toward them. "Come, come. Babies need feeding. Family needs feeding. Everything needs feeding." Watching Caleb try to manage both moving boxes and his grandmother's enthusiasm, seeing Evie charm the older woman with genuine interest in her recipes, Natalia felt something settle in her chest. This was home. Not the walls or the address, but these people, this love, this chance to build something new while honoring everything that came before. She touched the spot where her mother's height marks had tracked her growth, then pressed her hand to her bump, where her own children grew stronger every day. Some things ended, some things began. But love just kept growing, making room for more, building bridges between then and now, between what was lost and what was found. Life gave you exactly what you needed. Sometimes it just took a while to recognize the gift. The kitchen of their apartment was quiet except for the gentle ticking of the clock and the soft sounds of Natalia's knife against the cutting board. At 28 weeks pregnant, she'd developed a new rhythm in the kitchen, adapting her movements to accommodate her growing belly, finding ways to stay comfortable during long hours of prep work. Tonight's practice assignment for culinary school involved classical French techniques, and she'd been perfecting her brunoise cuts for the past hour. Tiny, precise cubes of vegetables lined up like soldiers on her board, each one exactly 6 millimeters on each side. Perfect practice for her practical exam next week. A sudden sharp pain made her drop the knife with a clatter. She gripped the counter, breathing through the discomfort until it passed. Braxton Hicks' contractions had become more frequent lately, but this one felt different. Her phone buzzed. "Caleb. Just finished my shift. Need anything on my way home?" Before she could reply, another pain hit stronger this time. When it passed, she noticed a puddle at her feet that hadn't been there before. "No," she typed with shaking fingers, "but come straight home. Something's wrong." The next 20 minutes were a blur of pain and fear. She managed to call her doctor, who calmly but firmly instructed her to get to the hospital immediately. 28 weeks was too early, far too early. Caleb burst through the door just as another contraction gripped her. He took in the scene in an instant, his paramedic training kicking in even as fear flickered across his features. "How far apart?" he asked, already gathering her hospital bag. 6 minutes? She wasn't sure anymore. Everything was happening. Too fast. "Caleb, it's too early." "I know, love." He helped her up, his touch steady despite the tremor in his voice. "But we've got the best NICU unit in Portland. Remember the tour?" The drive to the hospital was torturous. Every bump made Natalia wince. Every red light felt like an eternity. Caleb kept one hand on her knee, murmuring quiet encouragement even as he broke several speed limits. In the emergency room, everything accelerated. Doctors crowded around, speaking in urgent tones about preterm labor and magnesium sulfate. Through it all, Caleb never left her side, his hand anchoring her to reality. "I need to examine you," Dr. Martinez said, her usual warmth tempered by professional focus. "Mr. Monroe, you might want to step out." "He stays." Natalia gripped Caleb's hand harder. "Please." The examination was quick but thorough. Dr. Martinez's expression gave nothing away until she finished. "Good news," she said finally. "Your cervix isn't dilated. We caught it early. The bad news is you're having legitimate contractions, and your water has broken. We need to stop this labor now." "Can you?" Caleb's medical knowledge made his voice tight with understanding. "We're going to try." Dr. Martinez began writing orders on her chart. Bed rest, medication to stop the contractions, steroids to help the baby's lungs develop faster in case we can't stop it. Every day we keep them. Inside is crucial at this stage. Natalia's hands went to her belly, feeling the twins move restlessly. "My culinary exam is next week." "Oh, honey." Dr. Martinez's face softened. "No more classes for now, no more standing in kitchens, no more anything except lying in that bed and cooking these babies a little longer." The next few hours passed in a medication-induced haze. The contractions slowly eased, but fear maintained its grip on Natalia's heart. Caleb stepped out once to make calls, to his work, to her school, to Evie. Evie arrived like a whirlwind, laden with magazines, snacks, and a determined expression. "Okay, if you're stuck here, we're making it comfortable. I brought your favorite blanket from home, your mum's recipe journal, and—" She stopped, finally noticing Natalia's tears. "Hey!" She set everything down, perching on the edge of the bed. "They're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." "What if they're not?" Natalia's voice broke. "What if I failed them already?" "Failed them?" Caleb moved closer, his expression fierce. "You're fighting for them right now. With every breath, every minute you stay in that bed, you're fighting. That's not failure. That's the strongest kind of love." "But my classes, the kitchen hours I need—" "We'll be there later," he finished. "The school already said they'll hold your spot. Right now, your only job is growing our babies." A nurse entered with another dose of medication, checking monitors and making notes. "Try to rest," she advised. "The next 24 hours are critical." Late that night, after Evie had gone home and the hospital had quieted, Natalia lay, awake, watching Caleb doze in the uncomfortable recliner beside her bed. He'd refused to leave, calling in coverage for his next shift. Even in sleep, one of his hands stretched toward her, maintaining connection. "I'm scared," she whispered to the dim room. Caleb's eyes opened immediately. Of course he wasn't really sleeping. "Me too." "Tell me something good?" She needed distraction from the beeping monitors, from the weight of fear on her chest. He moved to sit on the edge of her bed, careful of the IV lines. "Remember when we first met? That night at the bar?" "Of course." "I almost didn't go out that night. Had a bad shift, wanted to just go home. But something told me to stop, to take a chance." He traced patterns on her palm. "Best decision I ever made. Even now, with all this? Especially now." He pressed a kiss to her fingers. "Every complication, every worry, every midnight craving run, it's all part of our story, and I wouldn't change a word." A flutter of movement drew their joined. Hands to her belly. Both twins seemed to be doing somersaults, perhaps responding to the medication or just reminding their parents they were still fighting too. "Tell them a story," Natalia asked softly. "Something happy." Caleb thought for a moment, then smiled. "Did I ever tell you about my first cooking lesson with Nonna? I was 6. Decided I was going to surprise my mum with breakfast." As he spoke, painting pictures of childhood mishaps and kitchen disasters turned family legends, Natalia felt some of her tension ease. Outside her window, Portland's ever-present rain tapped gentle rhythms against the glass. The monitors beeped steadily. The medication dripped slowly into her veins. They weren't out of danger, not yet. But they were together, fighting together, growing together. "Keep talking," she murmured when Caleb paused. "They like your voice. I can feel them settling." "Good, because I have about 1,000 more stories." He stretched out carefully beside her, one hand protective over her bump, and all the time in the world to tell them. In the quiet of the hospital night, surrounded by beeping monitors and whispered stories, Natalia made a silent promise to her children. They would stay strong, all of them, and when the time was right, when they were ready, she would tell them about this night, about how love meant fighting even when you were scared, about how family meant showing up, staying close, telling stories until the fear subsided, about how sometimes the best recipes took extra time, extra care, extra love to turn out just right. For now, though, she let herself be soothed by Caleb's voice, by the twins' movements, by the steady rain outside. Her window. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more monitoring, more waiting. But tonight, in this moment, they were all exactly where they needed to be. Together, fighting, loving, growing one day at a time. 6 weeks of hospital bed rest had changed everything and nothing. Natalia's world had shrunk to the dimensions of her hospital room, but her heart had never felt bigger. Every day brought small victories, each morning without contractions, each positive scan, each week that brought the twins closer to safe delivery. Now at 34 weeks, she sat propped up in bed, watching Portland's autumn rain paint patterns on her window. Her mother's recipe journal lay open on her lap, but her attention was on the ultrasound screen where Dr. Martinez was checking the twins' positions. "Baby A is head down," the doctor announced, moving the wand carefully, "and baby B is following their siblings' lead. Perfect positioning." Caleb squeezed Natalia's hand, his own medical knowledge letting him read the positive signs on the monitor. He'd rearranged his entire schedule over the past weeks, working night shifts so he could be with her during days, sleeping in the uncomfortable recliner more often than their bed at home. "So what does this mean?" Natalia asked, though she already suspected the answer from the doctor's smile. "It means," Dr. Martinez said, wiping the ultrasound gel from Natalia's now prominent belly, "that we can start talking about sending you home. The medications have done their job, the contractions have stopped, and the babies are growing beautifully." Joy and terror warred in Natalia's chest. "But what if—" "You'll still be on bed rest," the doctor assured her. "Just in your own space, with scheduled checkups. You've done the hard part, getting them this far. Now we just need a few more weeks of cooking time." Caleb laughed at the culinary reference, earning a smile from both women. It had become a running joke among the hospital staff, using cooking terms to describe Natalia's pregnancy. "Speaking of cooking," he said once Dr. Martinez had left, "Nonna's already planning your welcome home feast. I tried telling her you still need to rest, but she's Nonna," Natalia finished fondly. Over the weeks of her hospitalization, Caleb's grandmother had become a constant presence, bringing home-cooked meals and endless stories to help pass the time. Evie called too. She's finished setting up the nursery under Nonna's supervision, of course. The thought of going home, of seeing the nursery they'd barely started before the preterm labor scare, brought fresh tears to Natalia's eyes. Damn. Hormones. Hey. Caleb wiped her cheeks gently. Happy tears. Grateful tears. She caught his hand, pressing it to where one of the twins was doing their usual acrobatics. "We almost lost them. But we didn't. They're fighters like their mama." A knock at the door interrupted them. Miguel stood there, still in his chef's whites, holding a covered dish. "Brought you today's special," he said, entering with a grin. "Danny's new soup recipe. He says if you approve, he'll add it to the menu under Natalia's Comfort Classic." The gesture, so simple, so profound, made fresh tears spill. Through all these weeks, her Murphy's Corner family had never forgotten her. Danny called regularly with updates and recipe ideas. Miguel brought samples of new dishes, keeping her connected to the kitchen she loved. The culinary school called too, Miguel added, setting up the soup on her rolling table. "They're holding your spot for the spring semester. Said something about how their best students are worth waiting for." Natalia inhaled the aromatic steam from the soup, her chef's instincts automatically cataloguing ingredients. "It needs more time," she said, then laughed at herself. "God, I miss cooking." "Soon," Caleb promised, "one step at a time." As if agreeing, both twins kicked simultaneously, making them all laugh. Miguel stayed while she sampled the soup, sharing restaurant gossip and kitchen stories until his break ended. After he left, Natalia turned to her mother's recipe journal, drawing comfort from the familiar handwriting. A loose page slipped out, the letter she'd found on moving day. She'd read it so many times over these hospital weeks that the paper had grown soft at the folds. "Life gives us exactly what we need," she quoted softly. "Mom wrote that about you, you know. About all of this. She somehow knew." "Knew what?" "That love would find me when I wasn't looking. That family would grow in unexpected ways." She smiled through her tears. "That everything would be exactly as it should be, even when it seemed impossible." Caleb sat carefully on the edge of her bed, gathering her close. "Your mom was a wise woman. She would have loved all of this, the drama, the romance, She gestured to her belly. "The literal fruit of unexpected bar meetings." He laughed, then grew serious. "I have something to show you. Been waiting for the right moment." From his jacket pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Natalia's breath caught. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "Well, not exactly." He opened the box, revealing her mother's necklace, the one she hadn't been allowed to wear in the hospital, now transformed. The delicate silver chain held 3 small birthstones, her mother's, her own, and what would be the twins. "Evie helped me design it," he explained. "Your past, your present, your future, all connected." "Caleb," she touched the stones with trembling fingers. "I'm not proposing. Not yet. That's a conversation for when we're ready, when everything's settled." He fastened the necklace around her throat. "But I want you to know that I'm in this, all of it, forever, whatever shape that takes." Before she could respond, a new sensation rippled across her belly, different from the usual kicks and rolls. "Oh," she breathed. "What is it? Should I call the doctor?" "No, it's—" Another wave came, stronger. "I think these might be real." Contractions. Hours later, in the controlled chaos of the delivery room, Natalia held tight to both her necklace and Caleb's hand as she brought their children into the world. Luna Grace came first, announcing herself with a strong cry that made all the medical staff smile. Her brother, Leo Thomas, followed 2 minutes later, equally vocal about his arrival. 34 weeks and 3 days, Dr. Martinez announced proudly. Small but mighty. Listen to those lungs. In the recovery room, Natalia watched Caleb hold their daughters while she cradled their son. All 3 babies would need some NICU time, but their early signs were positive. "Fighters' spirits," the nurses said. Evie arrived first, bearing tiny hand-knitted hats and tears of joy. Then Nonna, who took one look at the babies and declared them perfect, absolutely perfect, in rapid-fire Italian. Miguel and Danny came. During evening visiting hours, bringing a welcome-to-the-world cake that Danny had stress-baked all afternoon. Late that night, when the visitors had gone and the babies were sleeping in their NICU incubators, Natalia lay in Caleb's arms, both exhausted and exhilarated. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For that night at the bar. For staying when things got complicated. For building this life with me." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thank you for letting me." She touched her necklace, feeling the 3 birthstones warm against her skin. In the NICU down the hall, their children were growing stronger every minute. At home, a nursery waited, decorated with love by their chosen family. In her heart, her mother's words echoed, "Life gives us exactly what we need." "I love you," she said, for the first time without fear or hesitation. "All of this, the chaos, the complications, the crazy, beautiful mess we've made, I love it all. I love you too." His voice held the same certainty she felt. "And I can't wait to see what recipe life gives us next." Outside her window, Portland's rain had finally stopped. Stars peeked through breaking clouds, promising a new day, a new chapter, a new beginning. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was for this moment, for love that grew from chance meetings, for family built of choice and circumstance, for tiny miracles breathing steady in their incubators, for endings that were really beginnings in disguise, for recipes that turned out perfect, even when you had to adjust the ingredients along the way, for life giving you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it most, even if what you need comes with morning sickness, hospital stays, and a side of legendary lasagna, even if what you need looks nothing like what you thought you wanted, even if what you need is everything you never knew to ask for, even then, especially then. 1 year later, the warm aroma of fresh bread filled the kitchen of Murphy's Corner as Natalia pulled another perfect loaf from the oven. Through the service window, she could hear the happy chaos of the Saturday brunch crowd, including one particularly enthusiastic squeal she'd recognize anywhere. "Sounds like Luna found the ceiling fans again," Miguel commented, grinning as he plated an order. "She's obsessed." Natalia shook her head fondly. "At least Leo's content to just watch his sister's amazement." At 10 months old, 8 adjusted, the twins had distinct personalities that kept everyone on their toes. Luna was the adventurer, always reaching for new experiences with her mother's determination. Leo was the observer, taking everything in with his father's quiet intensity. 5 minutes, Danny called from his office. "Everyone ready?" Today wasn't just any Saturday at Murphy's Corner. It was the official launch of their new weekend cooking classes, Natalia's project, born from her recently completed first semester at culinary school. The restaurant had transformed, adding a teaching kitchen where she could share her passion with others while maintaining the flexible schedule her family needed. "Mama!" Luna's voice carried through the kitchen, followed by the sound of Caleb's laughter. "I've got them," Evie's voice assured. "You focus on your class." Natalia touched her necklace, now bearing 5 birthstones instead of 3, with the twins added alongside the others. Through the service window, she caught glimpses of her family. Caleb in his day-off clothes, bouncing Leo on his hip, while Luna climbed him like a jungle gym. Evie, stylish as ever, documenting everything on her phone. Nonna, holding court at her regular table, already teaching the twins to say più formaggio whenever pasta was served. "Ready?" Danny appeared beside her, pride evident in his smile. Natalia surveyed her workspace, mise en place perfectly arranged, recipe cards printed, her mother's journal open to the family bread recipe they'd be starting with. "Ready," she confirmed. The teaching kitchen filled quickly with eager students. As Natalia began her introduction, she caught Caleb's eye through the window. He gave her a thumbs up, mouthing the words that had become their daily reminder. Small steps, big love. Life hadn't given them what they'd expected. It had given them something better, a recipe for joy, written in midnight cravings and morning sickness, in hospital stays and homecomings, in tiny hands reaching for ceiling fans and bigger hands, holding on through every storm, because sometimes the best recipes were the ones you never planned to make. Sometimes the most perfect ingredients were the ones that surprised you. And sometimes, just sometimes, life knew exactly what you needed, before you did, even if what you needed came with a side of legendary lasagna. The end between braids and scars shows us that sometimes life presents us with the greatest gifts in the most unexpected moments. She was innocent and pure, but she ran away from home and ended up in the arms of an unknown man. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She knew running away wouldn't fix anything, but staying felt like drowning. The fluorescent lights in the Greyhound station buzzed with the same monotonous hum that had followed Lace Ellis for the past 18 hours. Her fingers traced the crack running down her phone screen, a spiderweb of damage that seemed to mirror everything else in her life. The bus to Atlanta had been cramped, filled with strangers whose stories she'd never know, but somehow their silent presence felt less suffocating than the house she'd left behind in rural Georgia. 25 years old, and she was starting over with nothing but a backpack stuffed with wrinkled clothes, her grandmother's silver bracelet, and $17 in crumpled bills. The weight of depression sat heavy on her chest, familiar as an old coat she couldn't take off, no matter how warm the weather got. Her mother's last words still echoed in her mind. "You're just like your father, always running when things get hard." The accusation had cut deeper than intended, mainly because Lies feared it might be true. The city smelled different than home, exhaust fumes mixed with food trucks and the faint scent of rain on concrete. People moved with purpose here, their faces buried in phones, earbuds blocking out the world. Lies envied their certainty, their sense of direction. She pulled her hoodie tighter and opened Spotify, letting a melancholic playlist wash over her as she walked toward downtown. The apartment she'd found online was everything the listing had promised: small, affordable, and available immediately. What it hadn't mentioned was how the walls seemed to breathe with the sounds of neighboring lives. Arguments, laughter, someone practicing violin at odd hours. Her roommate, Destiny, was already there when she arrived, leaving dishes in the sink and makeup scattered across the bathroom counter like she was marking territory. "You're the Georgia girl, right?" Destiny barely looked up from her phone. "Rent's due on the 1st. Don't touch my stuff in the fridge." Lias nodded, too tired for conversation. Her room was barely larger than a closet, with a window that looked out onto a brick wall. She sat on the thin mattress and opened Instagram, scrolling through carefully curated lives that made her feel even smaller. Everyone seemed to have figured out some secret she'd missed: how to be happy, how to belong, how to make life look effortless. 3 weeks later, she'd settled into a routine that felt like sleepwalking. The administrative job at Hartwell and Associates was exactly as soul-crushing as expected. 8 hours of data entry, answering phones, and pretending to care about quarterly reports while her boss, Mr. Richardson, treated her like furniture that occasionally spoke. Her days blended together. Instant coffee, bus rides where she stared out rain-streaked windows, lunch eaten alone while watching TikTok videos of people half her age living lives that sparkled with possibility. The depression wrapped around her like fog, making everything seem muted and distant. Saturday morning found her at the corner coffee shop, the one place that felt remotely like home. The barista, a girl with purple hair and kind eyes, always remembered her order. Medium coffee, extra cream, no sugar. Lais appreciated not having to explain herself here. She was scrolling through job listings on her cracked screen, hoping to find something that paid more than survival wages, when she stood up too quickly. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers, its contents arcing through the air in what felt like slow motion. The hot liquid splashed across a stranger's white t-shirt, and Lais felt her face burn with embarrassment. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. He looked up, and she forgot whatever apology was forming on her lips. His eyes were the color of warm honey, and instead of anger, she saw something unexpected, understanding. "Hey, it's okay," he said, his voice gentle. "These things happen." As he reached for napkins, Lais noticed the guitar case leaning against his chair, covered in stickers from places she'd never been. Something stirred in her chest, not quite hope, but maybe its distant cousin. She had no idea that this clumsy moment would change everything she thought she knew about love. Sometimes the most beautiful connections begin with the messiest accidents. Cale Sumner had learned to read people's faces quickly. It came with the territory of playing music in subway stations and coffee shops. The young woman standing before him, her dark skin flushed with embarrassment, wore the same expression he'd seen in his own mirror countless mornings, someone carrying invisible weight. "I'll pay for dry cleaning," Lais stammered, fumbling through her small purse with shaking hands. "I'm so sorry, I'm having one of those weeks where everything I touch falls apart." He watched her count crumpled dollar bills, and something in his chest tightened. "Seriously, don't worry about it. It's just a shirt." He pulled off the coffee-stained fabric, revealing a faded band t-shirt underneath. "See? Problem solved." The purple-haired barista appeared with a towel and a knowing smile. "Kyle, honey, maybe this is the universe telling you to finally replace that raggedy old thing. Thanks for the fashion advice, Maya." He grinned, then turned back to Lais. "I'm Kyle, by the way, and you're having a rough week." Lais hesitated, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I'm Lais, and yeah, you could say that. New city, new job, new everything. I'm still figuring out how to not trip over my own feet. Atlanta can be overwhelming at first. I moved here 3 years ago with nothing but this guitar and a lot of naive optimism." He gestured toward his case, decorated with stickers from venues that had long since forgotten his name. "Some days I'm still figuring it out." Something shifted in her expression, surprise, maybe relief at finding someone who understood the weight of starting over. "You're a musician. I try to be. Reality says I'm a delivery guy who plays music in his spare time." Cale's laugh held no bitterness, just the weary acceptance of someone who'd made peace with his struggles. "But hey, the bike keeps me in shape, and I get to see the city from a different angle." Maya refilled Lais' coffee without being asked, a small kindness that didn't go unnoticed. Lais wrapped her hands around the warm cup like it was an anchor. "So what kind of music?" she asked, and Kyle caught something in her voice, genuine curiosity, not just polite conversation. "Folk, indie, whatever pays the bills, songs about real life, you know, the messy, imperfect stuff that most people don't want to talk about." He studied her face, noting how she seemed to lean in slightly. "What about you? What brings you to our chaotic little corner of the world?" Lais's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Still waiting for you to call me back." She quickly turned it face down, but not before Cale caught the shadow that crossed her features. "Just needed a change," she said quietly. "Sometimes staying in the same place feels like drowning in slow motion." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken truth. Cale recognized that particular brand of pain, the kind that came from families who loved you, but didn't know how to show it without causing damage. "I get that," he said softly. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave everything familiar behind." They fell into comfortable silence, watching Saturday morning Atlanta wake up outside the coffee shop windows. Delivery trucks rumbled past, joggers in bright athletic wear navigated cracked sidewalks, and somewhere in the distance, church bells reminded everyone that it was the weekend. "Can I ask you something?" Lais said suddenly. "Do you ever wonder if you made the right choice?" Leaving everything behind, I mean. Kyle considered this, absently strumming silent chords on his thigh, every single day. But then I remember that the alternative was staying somewhere I couldn't breathe. At least here, when I mess up, it's my mess to clean up. Lies smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her entire face, chasing away some of the sadness that seemed to follow her like a shadow. I should probably get going, she said, glancing at her cracked phone screen. I have groceries to buy and a very judgmental roommate to avoid. Wait. Kyle pulled out his own phone, fingers hovering over the keyboard. This might be forward, but would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime, when you're not accidentally throwing it at strangers? For a moment, Lias looked like she might say no. Her fingers twisted the strap of her purse, and Kyle could practically see her talking herself out of taking a chance. I'm not very good at this, she admitted. Making friends, I mean, or whatever this is. Neither am I, Kyle said honestly. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can figure it out together. She handed him her phone to input his number, and their fingers brushed briefly. A moment so small it might have been nothing or everything. As she walked away, Lias didn't know that the man with honey-colored eyes was about to become her reason to believe in tomorrow. The best conversations happen when the world is asleep and your guard is down. 3 days passed before Lias found the courage to text Kyle. She'd typed and deleted dozens of messages, each one feeling either too eager or too distant. Finally, at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, as while lying on her thin mattress listening to Destiny's loud phone conversation through the paper-thin walls, she sent something simple. Is it weird that I still smell coffee when I think about Saturday? His response came faster than expected. Only if it's weird that I've been carrying a clean shirt everywhere, just in case I meet another coffee assassin. Lias found herself smiling at her cracked phone screen, the first time she'd smiled all week. Her job at Hartwell & Associates had been particularly soul-crushing. Mr. Richardson had spent Monday lecturing her about proper filing techniques, as if organizing other people's paperwork was some sacred art she'd failed to master. Tuesday brought a pile of invoices that seemed to multiply when she wasn't looking, each one a reminder of how small her world had become. Coffee assassin, that's definitely going on my resume under special skills, she typed back. Is that right below? Can make grown men cry with her aim, I assume. Their conversation flowed easily after that, meandering from coffee disasters to favorite songs to the weird noises Atlanta makes at night. Kyle told her about his delivery route, how he'd learned the city's rhythm through its streets, the morning rush that felt like controlled chaos, the afternoon lull when shadows grew long between buildings, the evening surge of people eager to get home to their real lives. What's your favorite song right now? He asked around midnight. Lias hesitated. Her current playlist was embarrassingly melancholic, all slow piano and voices that understood sadness. She'd been listening to Phoebe Bridgers on repeat, finding comfort in lyrics that articulated feelings she couldn't name. You'll judge me, she typed. Try me. Motion Sickness by Phoebe Bridgers. It's sad girl music. Phoebe Bridgers is brilliant. Have you heard her cover of Summer's End? It'll destroy you in the best way. Relief flooded through her. No judgment, no suggestion that she listened to something more upbeat, just understanding. By Thursday, they'd exchanged numbers on Spotify and created a shared playlist called Coffee Shop Casualties. Kale added folk songs with guitar finger-picking that reminded Lias of summer evenings she'd never experienced. She contributed indie tracks with female voices that sounded like secrets whispered in empty rooms. Friday afternoon found Lias eating lunch alone in the office break room, scrolling through their messages while picking at a sad sandwich. Her co-worker, Nia, slid into the chair across from her, a woman in her 30s with natural hair styled in elegant twists and eyes that missed nothing. I have been different this week, Nia observed, unwrapping a container of leftover curry that smelled like home cooking. Less grey around the edges. Grey around the edges? Lias looked up from her phone. Honey, when I first saw you, you looked like someone had drained all the colour out of your world. This week there's been little sparks, mostly when you're staring at that phone and trying not to smile. Heat crept up Lias' neck. It's nothing, just made a friend. The kind of friend who has you checking your phone every 30 seconds. Nia's smile was knowing but kind. Good for you, baby. We all need someone who makes us remember what smiling feels like. That evening, as Lias waited for the bus home, her phone buzzed with a message from Kyle. Random question. What's the best meal you've ever had? She thought about elaborate restaurant dishes she'd seen on Instagram, fancy brunches that cost more than her daily food budget. Then she remembered being 12, sick with the flu, and her grandmother making grilled cheese and tomato soup from a can, cutting the sandwich into perfect triangles, and sitting beside her bed until she fell asleep. Grilled cheese and canned soup when I was sick. My grandmother made it taste like love. That's beautiful. Mine was gas station nachos at 2 a.m. after my first open mic. I was terrified I'd bombed, but this older musician told me I had something real. Those plastic cheese nachos tasted like possibility. Their conversation continued on the bus ride home, through dinner, instant ramen for her, leftover pizza for him, and into the quiet hours when the city settled into its nighttime rhythm. They talked about childhood fears and adult anxieties, about the weight of other people's expectations and the loneliness of trying to figure out who you're supposed to be. "Can I tell you something?" Lice typed at 1:23 a.m., lying in her narrow bed while Destiny's TV blared through the walls. "Always. I was scared to text you, not because you seem scary, but because, when was the last time something good happened to me? I keep waiting for the catch." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before his response came. "I get that. Sometimes good things feel dangerous when you're used to disappointment. But maybe we both deserve something that doesn't hurt." Lice stared at those words until they blurred. Maybe they both deserved something that didn't hurt. When was the last time she'd considered what she deserved, rather than what she could survive? "Want to meet for real coffee this weekend?" she typed before she could lose her nerve. "I promise to keep my hands steady this time. I'll bring a change of clothes, just to be safe." As she finally drifted off to sleep, Lice's phone glowed softly beside her pillow, their playlist painting the darkness with quiet melodies of hope. But she had no idea that Saturday would bring a revelation that would shake the foundation of everything she thought she knew about herself. The most dangerous thing about walls is how good they feel when someone finally convinces you to let them down. Saturday arrived with the kind of gentle sunshine that made Atlanta feel almost magical. Lias changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a soft yellow sweater that Nia had convinced her to buy last month. "Colors matter, honey," Nia had said. "They tell the world you're still fighting." They met at Piedmont Park, where families spread blankets on grass that was finally turning green after a harsh winter. Kyle was already there when she arrived, guitar case slung across his shoulder, looking effortlessly at ease in a way that made her slightly envious. His hair caught the afternoon light, and when he smiled at her approach, something warm unfurled in her chest. "How you came?" he said, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. "You sound like you thought I'd bail. I hoped you wouldn't. There's a difference." He gestured toward a large oak tree with shade that dappled the ground in shifting patterns. "I brought provisions." The provisions turned out to be gas station sandwiches, 2 bottles of sweet tea, and a bag of those ridiculously orange cheese crackers that tasted like childhood. They settled against the tree trunk, and Lias found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. "This is perfect," she said, unwrapping her sandwich. "I can't remember the last time I had a picnic." "Really? When I was growing up, my mom used to pack these elaborate lunches for me and my brother, sandwiches cut into shapes, homemade cookies, the whole thing." Kyle's expression grew distant. "She died when I was 20. Cancer. That's actually why I moved here. Couldn't stay in the house anymore." The admission hung between them like a delicate thing that might shatter if touched wrong. Lias felt her own walls shifting, recognizing the trust he'd just offered. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That must have been devastating." "It was. Still is some days. My brother Malik deals with it differently. He throws himself into work, becomes this corporate success story. Me, I apparently run away and try to make strangers cry with folk songs." Despite the sadness in his words, Lias found herself smiling. "Is that your artistic mission statement?" "Work in progress." Kyle pulled his guitar from its case, fingers automatically finding familiar chords. "What about you? What's your story with family?" The question she'd been dreading. Lice picked at the label on her sweet tea bottle, buying time. Around them, children played on swings while their parents scrolled through phones, and somewhere a dog barked at nothing in particular. "My mom and we don't understand each other. She thinks feelings are something you get over, like a cold. When I was diagnosed with depression, she asked what I had to be depressed about, as if sadness was a luxury I couldn't afford." The words came easier than expected, maybe because Kyle's hands continued their gentle movement across guitar strings, creating a soundtrack that made honesty feel safer. She wanted me to be grateful for what I had instead of sad about what I didn't. But sometimes your brain just betrays you, you know. It tells you you're worthless even when logic says otherwise. God, yes. Kyle's fingers stilled on the strings. The number of times people have told me to just think positive or focus on the good things, as if depression is a choice we make because we enjoy being miserable. Something loosened in Lice's chest, the relief of being understood without explanation. She watched his hands resume their movement, creating melodies that seemed to capture exactly how she felt when words weren't enough. "Will you play something?" she asked. "Something that sounds like this moment." Kyle's fingers found a gentle progression, something soft and hopeful with underlying complexity. He began to sing, his voice rough around the edges, but honest in a way that made her think of old wooden floors and morning coffee, and the feeling of finally exhaling after holding your breath too long. "Found you in the wreckage of my ordinary day, coffee stains and cracked phone screens. But your smile stayed. Maybe broken things can still be beautiful. Maybe lost souls find each other when they need to." The song was clearly improvised, born from this moment, this tree, this unexpected connection between two people who'd learned to expect disappointment. When he finished, the silence felt full rather than empty. "That was beautiful," Lias whispered. "That was you," he said simply. "You're the song I didn't know I needed to write." The words hit her like gentle lightning. When was the last time someone had seen her as inspiration rather than burden? When had anyone ever made her feel like she was worth writing about? Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. 3 weeks in Lace. 3 weeks since you've called. I know you're angry, but this silence is killing me." The spell broke. Reality crashed back. Responsibilities. Guilt. The weight of expectations she'd tried to leave behind. Cale must have seen her expression change because his hand found hers. Warm and steady. "Whatever that was, you don't have to deal with it alone anymore," he said. The words were meant to comfort, but they terrified her, because wanting someone to stay was the first step toward being devastated when they inevitably left. But as she looked into his honey-colored eyes, Lice realized she was already in too deep to protect herself from the fall. Sometimes the phone rings at exactly the wrong moment, bringing voices you've been running from. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday, jarring Lace from the first peaceful sleep she'd had in months. Her phone vibrated against the nightstand, the screen illuminating her small room with harsh blue light. Through the thin walls, she could hear Destiny's television still blaring some late-night reality show. "Lace, baby, please don't hang up." Her mother's voice sounded smaller than she remembered, fragile in a way that made Lay's chest tighten with unwanted concern. She'd been avoiding these calls for 3 weeks, watching her mother's name flash across her cracked screen before declining and returning to whatever distraction she could find. "Mom, it's 2 in the morning. I know, I couldn't sleep. The house feels so empty since you left, and I keep thinking about our last conversation." Her mother's voice broke slightly. "Honey, I said things I didn't mean. I was scared." Lice sat up in bed, pulling her knees to her chest. Outside her window, Atlanta hummed with the quiet energy of a city that never fully slept. Distant sirens, the occasional car, someone's music playing too loud in the apartment complex parking lot. "Scared of what?" The words came out harder than intended. "Of losing you completely, of not knowing how to help you when you were hurting so much. Your depression. I didn't understand it then, and I'm still trying to understand it now." The admission surprised Lace. Her mother had always been the type to barrel forward with solutions rather than acknowledge problems. Hearing her admit uncertainty felt like watching a small crack appear in a wall she'd thought was solid stone. "I needed you to listen, not fix me," Lace said quietly. "Every time I tried to explain how I felt, you'd tell me to count my blessings or think positive thoughts, as if gratitude could cure a chemical imbalance." "I know. God, Lace, I know I messed up. I thought if I could just get you to see all the good things in your life, the sadness would go away. I didn't understand that it doesn't work like that." Tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally spilled over. Her mother's voice carried the weight of someone who'd been doing her own painful learning, and despite everything, Lace found herself missing the woman who used to braid her hair and make pancakes shaped like hearts on Sunday mornings. "I'm seeing someone," her mother continued, "a therapist, trying to understand depression better, understand you better. She says I need to stop trying to fix everything and just be present." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, circling around old wounds with careful words. They didn't solve anything. 3 weeks of silence and years of misunderstanding couldn't be healed in one late-night phone call, but something shifted. A door that had been slammed shut cracked open just enough to let in a sliver of light. When Lies finally hung up, she found herself texting Cale despite the late hour. "Are you awake? Just had the strangest conversation with my mum." His response came within minutes. "Always awake around this time. Want to talk about it?" They texted until dawn, Lies curled under her thin blanket, while Cale apparently sat in his own small apartment across the city. He told her about his complicated relationship with his brother Malik, how grief had driven them apart, when it should have brought them closer. She shared pieces of her childhood, the weight of being the sensitive kid in a family that valued strength, the loneliness of feeling like an alien in her own home. "Maybe our families love us the only way they know how," Kyle wrote, "even when it's not the way we need them to." "That's very wise for 4 a.m., she replied. "I'm full of profound insights when I'm sleep-deprived. Ask me about the meaning of life." "What's the meaning of life?" "Coffee, and maybe finding someone who gets your weird sense of humor." Despite everything, Lias found herself smiling in the darkness. This was what she'd been missing, someone who could make her laugh even when her world felt upside down, who didn't try to fix her sadness but simply sat with her in it. Thursday at work passed in a haze of exhaustion and distraction. Mr. Richardson made pointed comments about her lack of focus, but even his disapproval couldn't penetrate the strange mix of emotions swirling through her. During lunch, Naya took one look at her face and dragged her to the small break room. "Spill," Nia commanded, settling across from her with a container of leftover jambalaya that made the whole room smell like home cooking. Lies found herself telling Nia everything. The late-night call, her mother's surprising vulnerability, the hours of texting with Kyle that had left her feeling raw and hopeful in equal measure. "Sounds like growth all around," Nia said thoughtfully. "Your mama's trying, you're trying, and this boy of yours is helping you remember that it's okay to let people in." "He's not my boy," Lies protested weakly. "Honey, when someone will stay up all night just to listen to you work through your feelings, that's your person. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" That evening, Kyle surprised her with an invitation. "Want to come to my place for dinner?" Fair warning, by dinner I mean pasta with whatever I can find in my kitchen, and by place I mean a studio apartment that's roughly the size of a shoebox. "Sounds perfect," she replied before she could overthink it. As she stood at the bus stop, watching Atlanta's evening rush hour unfold around her, Lays realized something had fundamentally shifted. For the first time in months, she was choosing hope over fear. But she had no idea that walking into Cale's small apartment would force her to confront the biggest question of all. What did she actually want from this fragile, beautiful thing growing between them? The most intimate moments happen in the smallest spaces, between the simplest words. Kyle's apartment was exactly as advertised, a shoebox with dreams. The entire space could have fit inside Lias's childhood bedroom, but somehow it felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years. String lights hung along one wall, casting warm shadows over a futon that doubled as both couch and bed, a small table that served as desk, dining room, and guitar repair station, and a kitchen that was basically a hot plate and a mini fridge with personality. "Welcome to my palace," Kyle said, setting down his delivery bag and kicking off worn sneakers. Fair warning, the neighbor upstairs practices tap dancing at random hours, and the guy next door has very loud phone conversations with someone named Brenda about their relationship drama. "It's perfect," Lias said, and meant it. The space was lived in but clean, cluttered with the kind of things that mattered. Books with cracked spines, a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest musician," photographs taped to the wall of people who looked like they'd been caught mid-laugh. "That's my family," Cale noticed her looking at the photos. "Back when we all still talked regularly." There was one picture that drew her attention. A younger Cale with his arm around a man who shared his eyes but wore them differently, more guarded. Both of them were grinning at something outside the frame, and the love between them was visible even in the faded colors. "That's Malik," Cale said quietly. "This was taken right before I left for Atlanta. We haven't talked much since Mom died. He thinks I'm wasting my life chasing impossible dreams." "Are you?" The question slipped out before Lies could stop it. Kyle paused, a box of spaghetti halfway out of a cabinet that looked like it might fall off its hinges. "Some days, I think so. Other days, I think the only thing worse than chasing an impossible dream is giving up on it completely." He moved around the tiny kitchen with practiced efficiency, somehow managing to cook pasta, heat-jarred marinara sauce, and toast bread in a space barely larger than a closet. Lais perched on his futon, watching him work and feeling something she hadn't experienced in months. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of the constant low-level anxiety that had become her baseline. "Can I ask you something?" she said, as he handed her a mismatched plate piled with spaghetti. "When did you know you wanted to do music? Like, really know?" Kyle settled beside her, close enough that she could smell his soap, something simple and clean that reminded her of Sunday mornings. "I was 16. My mum was going through chemo, and she couldn't sleep because of the pain, so I'd sit by her bed and play guitar until she drifted off. One night, she told me that my music was the only thing that could quiet her mind." He twirled spaghetti around his fork, with the concentration of someone buying time before continuing. "She died 2 years later, but that feeling, knowing I could create something that brought peace to someone I loved, I've been chasing it ever since." "That's beautiful," Lais whispered. "It's also terrifying, because what if I never find it again? What if that was my one moment of actually mattering, and I'm just too stubborn to accept it?" The vulnerability in his voice made her chest tight. Here was someone who understood the weight of carrying other people's expectations alongside your own dreams, who knew what it felt like to wonder if you were enough. "You matter to me," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "This," she gestured between them, at the tiny apartment, at the simple meal they were sharing, "this matters." Something shifted in his expression, a wall coming down that she hadn't even realized was there. "You scare me," he admitted. "I scare you. You make me want things I've convinced myself I can't have. Stability, someone to come home to, the kind of love that doesn't run away when things get hard." He set down his fork, turning to face her fully. "I've been alone for so long that I forgot what it felt like to want to share my life with someone." Lais felt her breath catch. They were venturing into territory she'd been avoiding, the space between friendship and something deeper, where words carried weight and silence meant everything. "I'm not good at this," she said quietly. "Relationships. I mean, I have a tendency to disappear when things get real, to convince myself that people are better off without my baggage. What if I want your baggage?" Cale's hand found hers, fingers interlacing with surprising ease. "What if I want all of it? The 2 a.m. phone calls with your mum, the bad days when you can't get out of bed, the way you overthink text messages before sending them." "How do you know about the text messages?" "Because you do this thing where you start typing and then stop. I can see the dots appear and disappear on my phone. It's adorable." Heat crept up her neck. "That's embarrassing. That's human. We all want to say the right thing, especially to people who matter." The word matter hung between them, heavy with implication. Outside, Atlanta's evening symphony played, car horns, distant music, the rumble of the MARTA train, carrying people to their real lives. But inside this small apartment, with string lights casting everything in warm gold, Lais felt like maybe she was already living her real life. "I should probably head home," she said, though she made no move to leave. "Destiny gets weird when I'm out too late, like I'm abandoning our non-existent friendship." "Or," Kyle said carefully, "you could stay. I mean, just to hang out. We could watch something terrible on my laptop and you could judge my limited tea selection." The offer was casual, but his eyes held a question that went deeper. "Stay. Trust this. Let someone take care of you for once." As Lais looked around his tiny apartment, at the photos of people who loved him, at the guitar that held his dreams, at the man who was offering her something she'd never dared to want, she realized that sometimes the biggest risks come disguised as the simplest choices. The morning after you let someone in is when you discover if they're planning to stay. Lais woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the distant sound of someone practicing scales on a piano. For a moment, disorientation clouded her thoughts. This wasn't her cramped room with its view of a brick wall, and the mattress beneath her was softer than the thin foam she'd grown accustomed to. Then she remembered Cale's apartment. They'd fallen asleep, watching an old romantic comedy on his laptop, her head finding its way to his shoulder somewhere around the second act. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes, covered by a soft blanket that smelled like fabric softener, and something uniquely him. Kyle sat at his small table, guitar in his lap, fingers moving quietly across the strings. He was trying to play softly, she realized, trying not to wake her. The consideration of it made her chest warm. "Good morning," she said, voice rough with sleep. He looked up, and his smile was like sunrise, slow, gentle, transformative. "Hey, I was starting to think you might sleep all day. How do you feel?" How did she feel? Different. Lighter, maybe. Like some weight she'd been carrying had been set down without her noticing. Good. Really good, actually. Coffee? He gestured toward a French press that looked older than both of them combined. Fair warning, it's strong enough to wake the dead. Perfect. As he poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, Liz checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Destiny, and a text that read, "Where are you? Your bed wasn't slept in and I was about to call the police or something." "Roommate drama?" Kyle asked, noticing her expression. "She's just dramatic. I should probably head home soon and assure her I wasn't kidnapped." Lice accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "This is incredible. Where did you learn to make coffee like this? YouTube University?" Also, desperation. When you can't afford good coffee shops, you learn to make magic happen at home. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee while Atlanta woke up around them. Through the thin walls, she could hear the tap dancer upstairs beginning their morning routine and someone's alarm going off repeatedly next door. It should have been chaotic, but somehow the symphony of other people's lives felt comforting rather than intrusive. "I need to tell you something," Kyle said suddenly, setting down his mug. "Last night, having you here, waking up and seeing you still there, it felt like something I could get used to." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Liz felt her heart speed up. That familiar flutter of panic when something good threatened to become real. "Kyle, I know it's fast," he continued, as if he could sense her retreat beginning. "I know we barely know each other, and I know you're dealing with your own stuff, but I also know that I haven't felt this connected to another person in years." Liz stared into her coffee cup, watching the surface ripple slightly with her breathing. Everything in her wanted to run, to make excuses, create distance, protect herself from the inevitable disappointment. But something stronger held her in place, the memory of falling asleep feeling safe for the first time in months. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of this. Of wanting something this much. Of letting myself hope that maybe—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "Maybe what?" "Maybe I deserve something good for once." Kyle reached across the small space between them, cupping her face gently in his hand. "You deserve everything good, Liz. Every single beautiful thing this world has to offer." Tears threatened, but they were different from the ones she'd grown accustomed to, not born from sadness or frustration, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen clearly and accepted completely. Her phone buzzed with another text from Destiny. "Seriously, where are you?" The moment broke, reality creeping back in. Liz pulled back reluctantly, already missing the warmth of his touch. "I really should go," she said, though every part of her wanted to stay in this tiny apartment where the world felt manageable and hope seemed possible. "I know." Kyle stood, moving to grab a hoodie from a hook by the door. "Let me walk you to the bus stop." "You don't have to." "I want to." They gathered her things in comfortable silence, and Kyle tucked his guitar back into its case. As they prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Liz, last night wasn't just about being lonely, was it? I mean, for either of us." She met his eyes, seeing her own hope reflected there. "No, it wasn't." "Good, because I'd like to do it again. The dinner, the talking, the falling asleep watching terrible movies, all of it." Outside, Atlanta buzzed with Saturday morning energy. Joggers claimed the sidewalks. Families headed toward the park with strollers and soccer balls, and the smell of bacon drifted from a nearby diner. They walked slowly, neither wanting to rush toward goodbye. At the bus stop, Kyle pulled out his phone. "There's something I want to show you. A music festival happening next month. Local acts. Very small, very low-key. I'm thinking about signing up to play." "That's amazing. You should definitely do it. Would you want to come? If I get accepted?" The question was casual, but Liz could hear the weight behind it. He was asking for more than just her presence at a show. He was asking her to be part of his dreams, to invest in a future that included both of them. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with how quickly the answer came. "I'd love to." When the bus arrived, Kyle kissed her forehead gently, a gesture so tender it made her knees weak. As she found a seat by the window, she watched him wave goodbye, hands shoved deep in his pockets, hair catching the morning light. For the first time in her adult life, Liz found herself looking forward to Monday. Not because work had suddenly become bearable, but because it meant another week of text messages and shared playlists and the possibility of more nights like last night. But as the bus carried her back toward her real life, She had no idea that everything was about to change, and that sometimes the biggest challenges come disguised as phone calls you're not ready to answer. Sometimes life waits until you're finally happy to remind you how fragile happiness really is. The call came on a Tuesday that had started like any other. Liz was sorting through invoices at her desk, half listening to Mr. Richardson complain about quarterly projections, when her phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. She almost let it go to voicemail. Unknown numbers usually meant bill collectors or robocalls, but something made her answer. Lais Ellis. Yes. This is Dr. Patricia Moreau from Grady Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about your mother, Carmen Ellis. She's been admitted, and you're listed as her emergency contact. The world tilted sideways. The invoices scattered from Lace's hands as she gripped her phone tighter, Mr. Richardson's voice fading into background noise. What happened? Is she okay? She had what appears to be a minor heart attack. She's stable now, but she's been asking for you. Can you come in? Liz was already grabbing her purse, mumbling something to Mr. Richardson about a family emergency. The bus ride to the hospital felt eternal, every red light and slow passenger adding weight to the panic building in her chest. She kept thinking about their last conversation, the late-night call where her mother had sounded smaller, more vulnerable than ever before. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and anxiety. Liz found her mother in a small room on the cardiac floor, looking tiny against the white sheets, monitors beeping softly around her. Carmen Ellis had always seemed larger than life to her daughter, the woman who worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, who never showed weakness, who approached problems like enemies to be defeated. Seeing her like this, fragile and pale, shattered something in Liz's chest. Baby, her mother whispered, reaching out with a hand that trembled slightly. You came. Of course I came. Liz took her mother's hand, surprised by how cold it felt. What happened? The doctor said it was your heart. Stress, they think? Work, money, worry about you? Carmen's voice was hoarse, worn thin. The doctor says I need to make changes. Slow down. Take better care of myself. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken years settling between them. Finally, Carmen spoke again. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing me to listen instead of trying to fix everything, about your depression. Mum, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I've spent so much time being angry at your sadness that I forgot to ask why you were hurting. I thought if I could just make you grateful enough, strong enough, you'd stop being depressed. But that's not how it works, is it? Tears Liz had been holding back finally spilled over. No, it's not. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry for making you feel like your feelings were wrong. They talked for hours, about depression, about family expectations, about the weight of trying to be strong all the time. It wasn't a magic cure, but it was a beginning. When visiting hours ended, Liz promised to come back the next day. On the bus home, she texted Cale, at the hospital. Mom had a heart attack. She's okay, but I don't know how to process this. His response came immediately. On my way, what hospital? You don't have to come. I'm headed home now. I want to be there. Where should I meet you? Something in her chest loosened at his words. When was the last time someone had dropped everything just to be present for her pain? They met at a 24-hour diner near her apartment, one of those places that existed in the liminal space between late night and early morning. Cale was already there when she arrived, 2 cups of coffee cooling on a worn Formica table. He stood when he saw her, and without a word, pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home. How is she? He asked once they'd settled into the cracked vinyl booth. Liz told him everything. The phone call, the hospital, the conversation with her mother that had cracked open years of misunderstanding. Cale listened without trying to fix or minimize, just held space for her complex emotions. I feel guilty, she admitted, stirring sugar into coffee she didn't really want. For being relieved that she finally understands, for being angry that it took a heart attack for her to listen, for wanting to forgive her and also wanting to stay mad. All of that makes sense, Cale said quietly. Grief isn't just about death. Sometimes it's about mourning the relationship you wish you'd had while figuring out how to build the one you actually want. His phone buzzed, and Liz saw his expression change as he read the message. A shadow crossed his face, the same look he got when talking about his brother, Malik. Everything okay? Kyle set his phone down carefully, like it might explode. That was Theo. You remember, my friend who's been helping me organize the festival audition. The one I told you about. Yeah, I got accepted. I'm playing next Saturday night. He should have sounded excited, but his voice was flat, almost resigned. That's amazing. Kyle, this is what you've been working toward. The same weekend you need to be with your mum. The same weekend your family is falling apart and you need support. He ran his hands through his hair. The timing is terrible. Lies felt something cold settle in her stomach. Guys, what are you saying? I'm saying maybe I should cancel. Your mom is more important than some small-time festival where probably 12 people will show up. Don't! The word came out sharper than intended. Don't you dare cancel your dreams for me. But I need you to trust that I can handle this. I need you to believe that I'm strong enough to support your dreams, even when my life is complicated. Lais reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. This is your chance, Kyle. You can't pass it up. They argued quietly for another hour, both trying to do the right thing, both terrified of making the wrong choice. Finally, Kyle agreed to keep the gig, but the joy had been leached out of it. What should have been a celebration felt like another complication in lives that were already too complicated. Walking to the bus stop, Lais felt the familiar weight of depression settling back over her shoulders like an old coat. For a few weeks, she'd almost forgotten how heavy it could be. Now with her mother in the hospital, and Cale preparing for the biggest opportunity of his career, she felt the old urge to disappear, to make herself smaller, so she wouldn't be a burden on anyone else's happiness. As she watched Cale's worried face in the fluorescent diner light, Lace realized that loving someone meant learning to carry both joy and sorrow at the same time, and she wasn't sure she was strong enough for either. The week before everything changes is when you discover what you're really made of. The days following her mother's heart attack blurred together like watercolors in rain. Lace found herself living in a strange, liminal space, splitting time between the hospital's sterile corridors and her cramped apartment, between supporting her mother's recovery and trying to maintain some semblance of normal life. Sleep came in fragments, and food tasted like cardboard. Mr. Richardson had been surprisingly understanding about her need for flexible hours, though his version of compassion involved pointed comments about maintaining professional standards during personal crises. Nia picked up the slack without being asked, covering phones when Lais disappeared for long lunch breaks at the hospital. "You look like hell, honey," Nia said Thursday afternoon, sliding a container of homemade soup across Lais's desk. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" "I'm fine," Lais lied, stirring the soup without really tasting it. Her mother was doing better, stable, talking about discharge plans, even making jokes with the nurses. But the scare had shaken something loose in Lais that she couldn't quite name. "And how's your musician boy handling all this?" That was the question Lais had been avoiding. Cale had been nothing but supportive, texting throughout the day, bringing her coffee at the hospital, listening to her process the same anxieties over and over, but she could see the strain in his face, the way he kept checking his phone for updates from Theo about the festival, the careful way he avoided mentioning Saturday night's performance unless she brought it up first. "He's being amazing," she said, which was true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was that she felt like she was drowning him in her crisis, pulling him under just when he needed to soar. That evening, she sat beside her mother's hospital bed while Carmen dozed fitfully. The monitors had become background music, steady beeps that marked time in a place where time felt suspended. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. "How's she doing today?" "Better. Doctors think she can go home Monday." "That's great news. How are you doing?" Such a simple question, but it made tears spring to her eyes. How was she doing? She was terrified of losing her mother, just when they'd started to understand each other. She was exhausted from shuttling between worlds. She was scared that her depression was seeping back in, coloring everything grey despite the genuine progress with her mom, and she was terrified that she was becoming exactly the kind of burden she'd always feared being. "I'm okay. Are you ready for Saturday?" "As ready as I can be. Theo thinks there might be some industry people there. Small time, but still." Even through text, she could feel his excitement, carefully contained out of respect for her situation. This was his moment, the opportunity he'd been working toward since moving to Atlanta, and she was making it about her problems. "I'm so proud of you," she typed. "You're going to be incredible. I wish you could be there." The words hit her like a physical blow. Of course he wished she could be there. This was his dream, and she was supposed to be the person cheering him on from the front row. Instead, she'd become the complicated girlfriend whose family drama took precedence over everything else. Friday brought discharge papers and the complicated logistics of getting her mother settled back home. The 3-hour drive to rural Georgia felt eternal. Carmen dozing in the passenger seat, while Lais navigated back roads she'd hoped never to see again. Her childhood home looked smaller than she remembered, more weathered, like it had aged years in the month since she'd left. "You don't have to stay," her mother said as Lais helped her settle on the living room couch. "I know you have that young man's concert tomorrow night. It's not a concert, it's a festival. And I'm staying until you're stable, Lais." Carmen's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent years managing crisis and responsibility. "I'm going to be fine. Mrs. Patterson next door is checking on me every few hours, and the visiting nurse comes Monday. You've done enough." "I haven't done anything. I wasn't even here when I had a heart attack that was 30 years in the making." Carmen's laugh was dry but not unkind. "Baby, this wasn't your fault, and staying here feeling guilty isn't going to fix my heart or make up for lost time." They sat in the familiar living room where Lais had spent countless childhood hours, feeling like a stranger in her own home. The silence stretched between them, but it was different now, less loaded with resentment, more pregnant with possibility. "I'm scared," Lais admitted quietly, "of leaving you alone, of going back to Atlanta and pretending everything's normal, of being happy when you're still recovering." "And I'm scared of you staying here out of obligation instead of love," Carmen replied. "We've wasted too many years being afraid of the wrong things." Her phone rang, Kyle calling, probably to check in before his show tomorrow. Lais let it go to voicemail, then immediately felt guilty for avoiding him. "Answer it," her mother said gently. "I don't know what to say to him. He's got this huge opportunity tomorrow, and I'm here dealing with family drama. He's being supportive, but I can see that I'm holding him back. Or maybe you're scared that if you let yourself be happy for him, you'll have to admit that good things can happen even when life is complicated." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Was that what she was doing? Using her mother's crisis as an excuse to retreat back into the familiar territory of martyrdom and self-denial. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Against her better judgment, she played it on speaker. "Hey, it's me. I know you're dealing with a lot right now, but I wanted you to hear this before tomorrow night. Whatever happens at the festival, win or lose, you've already changed everything for me. You made me remember why I wanted to make music in the first place, to connect with people, to make them feel less alone. That's what you do just by existing, Lais. You make people feel less alone." A pause, the sound of him breathing. "I love you. I needed to say that, even if the timing is terrible. I love you and I believe in us, and I hope you believe in us too." The message ended, leaving silence that felt heavy with possibility and terror in equal measure. Carmen was watching her daughter's face with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to read emotional weather patterns. "That boy loves you. I know. Do you love him?" The question she'd been avoiding for weeks, maybe longer. Did she love Cale? Yes. Desperately, terrifyingly, completely. Did she trust herself to love him without destroying what they'd built? That was the question that kept her awake at night. "I love him so much it scares me," she whispered. And as the words left her lips, Lais realized that tomorrow would demand the biggest decision of her life, whether to run toward love or away from it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show up, even when you're terrified of what showing up might cost you. Saturday evening found Lais sitting in her rental car outside the Riverside Community Center, watching people stream through the doors, carrying folding chairs and homemade signs supporting local bands. The drive from Georgia had taken 4 hours. 4 hours of arguing with herself, of pulling over twice to turn around, of her mother's voice echoing in her head, "Stop being afraid of the wrong things." Through the windows, she could see the warm glow of string lights and hear the distant sound of a guitar being tuned. Cale was in there somewhere, probably pacing behind the small stage, running through lyrics in his head, wondering if she'd kept her word about believing in them. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nia. "Girl, you better be at that boy's show, or I'm driving to Georgia myself to drag you back." Another from her mother. "Go be happy, baby. You've got my permission." Lais laughed despite her nerves, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. When had she become the kind of person who needed permission to choose joy? The community center lobby buzzed with small-town energy, families claiming seats, teenagers clustering around the merch table, older folks greeting each other like old friends. It felt intimate and genuine in a way that made Lais's chest tight with something that might have been hope. She found Theo near the backstage area, a tall guy with kind eyes and nervous energy, checking items off a clipboard. He looked up when she approached, his face breaking into a surprised grin. "You must be Lais. Kyle's been checking his phone every 30 seconds all day. Is he terrified? Excited? Probably about to throw up? The usual pre-show cocktail. Theo's expression grew more serious. He didn't think you were coming, said you had family stuff to deal with. I did. I do. But she looked toward the stage where someone was doing a final sound check. Some things are more important than perfect timing. Theo's smile was understanding. He goes on in about 20 minutes. Third act. You want me to tell him you're here? Lies shook her head. I want to surprise him. She found a seat toward the back, close enough to see everything but far enough away to process her emotions without being seen. The first 2 acts were good. A folk duo with tight harmonies and a solo singer-songwriter whose lyrics made the audience lean forward in recognition. But when Kyle walked onto the small stage, guitar case slung over his shoulder, something in the room shifted. He looked different up there, more himself somehow. The nervous energy that usually surrounded him had transformed into something focused and powerful. He adjusted the microphone, scanned the audience, and for a moment his eyes found hers across the dimly lit room. The surprise on his face was worth every mile of the drive from Georgia. Good evening, he said into the microphone, his voice steady despite what she knew must be racing emotions. I'm Cale Sumner, and I want to start by saying that the most important person in my world just reminded me that sometimes love means showing up, even when it's inconvenient. Heat crept up Lia's neck as people around her murmured appreciatively. A few heads turned in her direction, but she barely noticed. She was too focused on the man on stage who was looking at her like she'd just given him the greatest gift imaginable. Yeah, this first song is called Coffee Stains, Kyle continued, fingers finding the opening chords. It's about how the best accidents are the ones that change your life. What followed was 15 minutes of pure magic. Kyle sang about small-town dreams and big-city loneliness, about the weight of carrying other people's expectations and the lightness of finding someone who understood your particular brand of broken. His voice was rough around the edges, but honest in a way that made the audience forget they were listening to performance rather than confession. But it was the final song that broke Lias completely. She recognized the melody from that afternoon in the park, but the lyrics were new. She came with baggage and a cracked phone screen, carrying sadness like a familiar friend. But her smile could light up the darkest scenes, and her love could teach broken hearts to mend. I was lost in the noise of an ordinary day until coffee spilled and changed everything. Now I know that love isn't finding someone perfect, it's finding someone perfect for you. The applause was immediate and sustained, but Kyle's eyes never left Lias's face. When he finally stepped off the stage, she was already moving through the crowd, not caring who she bumped into or what conversation she interrupted. They met in the middle of the room, and without hesitation, she threw her arms around his neck. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while people cheered and whistled around them. You came, he whispered against her ear. I almost didn't. I spent the whole week convinced I was holding you back, that my problems were too big, that I didn't deserve. Hey, he set her down, cupping her face in his hands. Look at me. You deserve everything beautiful this world has to offer, but more than that, you make everything beautiful. Did you hear what happened out there? You were incredible. I was real. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing or pretending or trying to be what I thought people wanted. I was just me. And that's because of you. Because you taught me that being enough exactly as I am is possible. Around them, the crowd was thinning as people headed toward the parking lot, but Theo appeared at Kyle's shoulder with news that made both of their hearts stop. There was a talent scout here tonight, he said, barely containing his excitement, from a management company in Nashville. She wants to talk to you about representation. The words hung in the air like a promise and a question mark. Nashville, professional representation, everything Cale had been working toward, now within reach. That's incredible, Lies said, and meant it, even as fear tried to claw its way up her throat. Kyle, this is your dream. It's one dream, he said carefully, his hands still framing her face. But I've got another dream standing right in front of me. You can't choose me over your career. I'm not choosing you over anything. I'm choosing us. Whatever comes next, we figure it out together. Nashville, Atlanta, the moon. I don't care where we end up as long as we end up there together. The talent scout approached then, a woman in her 40s with shrewd eyes and a genuine smile, and for the next hour, Lice watched Kyle navigate the kind of conversation that could change his life. She stayed close but let him lead, offering silent support while he discussed possibilities and timelines and the delicate balance between artistic integrity and commercial viability. When they finally walked out of the community center together, the Georgia night air was thick with summer humidity and the sound of crickets. Kyle's guitar case bumped against his leg with each step, and Lias's hand was warm in his. "So," she said, as they reached her rental car. "Nashville, huh? Maybe. Probably. It would mean leaving Atlanta, starting over again." "I'm good at starting over," Lias said quietly. "And maybe it's time I stopped running from good things." Kyle stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I'm terrified and excited and completely unprepared for any of this. But I'm also saying yes. Yes to Nashville. Yes to starting over. Yes to figuring out what our life looks like when we build it together." His kiss tasted like possibility and promises they were finally brave enough to make. As they stood in the parking lot of a small-town community center, holding each other under a canopy of stars, Lias realized that love wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who inspired you to complete yourself. 2 years later, love isn't the absence of struggle. It's the presence of someone who chooses to struggle alongside you. The Nashville apartment was smaller than their place in Atlanta had been, but it felt like home in ways that square footage couldn't measure. Sunlight streamed through windows that faced east, catching the dust motes that danced above Kyle's guitar case, now one of 3, thanks to the modest success of his debut EP. The walls were covered with a mixture of his tour posters and printouts of Lias's blog posts, the ones that had started as a way to process her depression and grown into something that helped thousands of other people feel less alone. Lias sat at her laptop at their small dining table, responding to comments on her latest post about navigating anxiety during major life changes. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from her mother, not the panicked kind from 2 years ago, but the excited kind that came when Carmen Ellis had news to share and couldn't wait for their weekly Sunday call. She finally said yes, her mother's voicemail revealed, laughter bubbling through the phone speaker. "Mr. Patterson proposed last night, and I said yes. At 72. Can you believe it? I wanted you to be the first to know." Kyle looked up from the kitchen where he was making coffee, still the same elaborate French press ritual, though now he could afford the good beans. "Your mum's getting married. Apparently finding love at any age runs in the family." Lias grinned, already dialing her mother back. The conversation that followed was everything their relationship had become: warm, honest, occasionally frustrating, but always rooted in genuine affection. Carmen's heart attack had been the crisis that forced them both to choose healing over being right, and the 2 years since had been a slow, steady process of building something new from the foundation of who they really were, rather than who they'd expected each other to be. "We want a small ceremony," Carmen was saying. "Just family and close friends. Will you and Cale be able to make it?" "Of course. We wouldn't miss it." Lias caught Cale's eye across their tiny kitchen, sharing the smile that passed between people who'd learned that family was something you created as much as inherited. After hanging up, she found herself scrolling through her blog's comment section, something that usually felt overwhelming, but today brought unexpected joy. Her post about loving someone with depression had been shared nearly 3,000 times, and the responses were a mix of gratitude, recognition, and people sharing their own stories of finding love despite mental illness. "Thank you for writing this. My partner struggles with anxiety, and I never knew how to help without making things worse. Your words gave me language for support instead of solutions. I'm the one with depression in my relationship, and I've been so scared of being a burden. Reading about how you and your boyfriend navigate this together gives me hope that love is possible even when my brain lies to me. 2 years clean from self-harm, 6 months into therapy, and finally brave enough to let someone love me. Your blog helped me believe I deserve good things." Each comment represented someone choosing vulnerability over isolation, connection over safety. Lias still took her antidepressants every morning with her coffee, still had days when the weight of sadness felt too heavy to carry, but she'd learned that healing wasn't about becoming a different person. It was about becoming more fully herself, depression and all. "Hey," Cale said, settling beside her with 2 steaming mugs. "Earth to Lies, you've got that look." "What look?" "The look you get when you're reading comments and remembering that your words matter to people. It's a good look on you." She leaned into his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his soap mixed with coffee and the faint smell of guitar strings. Through their window, she could hear Nashville waking up, delivery trucks, morning commuters, someone practicing piano in the building next door. "Theo called while you were talking to your mum," Kyle said. The label wants to discuss a full album. Nothing set in stone, but they're interested in the direction we've been heading. That's incredible. You must be cautiously optimistic, he finished. I learned that phrase from you. It was true. Success in Nashville had come slowly, built on late-night gigs and streaming numbers that grew steadily rather than exploded overnight. Cale's music had found its audience, people who appreciated honesty over polish, stories over hooks. He played smaller venues than he'd once dreamed of, but the connection with his audience was deeper, more genuine. There's something else, he said, reaching into his pocket. Joe, I know we talked about doing things our own way, about not following other people's timelines. Lys's heart stuttered as he pulled out a small velvet box, worn around the edges like it had been carried for a while. I don't need a big proposal or a perfect moment, he continued, opening the box to reveal a simple silver band with a small diamond that caught the morning light. I just need you to know that every day I choose you feels like the easiest decision I've ever made. The ring was perfect, understated but thoughtful, classic but uniquely them. Lys found herself crying, not from sadness for once, but from the overwhelming recognition of being completely known and loved anyway. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes, obviously yes. As Kyle slipped the ring onto her finger, Lys thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that coffee shop accident to this moment in their Nashville kitchen, surrounded by the ordinary magic of a life they'd built together. It hadn't been easy. There had been arguments about money and career decisions, days when her depression made her difficult to live with, nights when his anxiety about the music industry kept them both awake. But they'd learned to fight fair, to support each other's dreams even when those dreams felt incompatible with security, to love each other through the difficult seasons as well as the joyful ones. Later that evening, they sat on their small balcony sharing takeout pad thai and planning their future. The conversation meandered from wedding details to career goals to the possibility of adopting a cat, the kind of domestic dreaming that had once terrified Lys and now felt like the greatest luxury imaginable. Can I tell you something? She said as the Nashville skyline glittered in the distance. Always. 2 years ago, when I was getting on that bus to Atlanta, I thought I was running away from everything, but I was actually running toward this, toward you, toward us, toward a life where being sad sometimes doesn't disqualify me from being happy most of the time. Kyle's hand found hers, his thumb tracing the new ring that caught streetlight and starlight in equal measure. We're going to have a beautiful life, he said quietly. Not perfect, but beautiful. Real. As they sat together in the warm Nashville evening, surrounded by the sounds of a city full of dreamers, Lys realized that love wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who inspired you to complete yourself, one imperfect, courageous day at a time. What did you learn from Lys and Cale's story? Have you ever had to choose between running away from love and running toward it? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.